Welcome to 'Cause We're Nerds, the podcast that covers trends and new releases in comics, movies, video games, board games, and much more. I'm your host, Andy, and I'm joined by the rest of my fire team, Lou and Chris. Caleb is on assignment in Rio and has asked us to cover something near and dear to our hearts. Today, we're looking at the evolution of video games over the last decade. What trends did we see take over mainstream games? What inspiration are they taking from the indie scene? How entertaining is entertainment about video games, really? And how are we going to cover all of this in about an hour? Find out on this week's episode of 'Cause We're Nerds. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of 'Cause We're Nerds. We are back. It's me, Andy. We've got Chris over here and Lou over here. Like I said, my fire team. We are excited. We're going to talk about some things that we have been playing over the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's a lot to cover.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover. So
it's a big list.
I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of review the past decade, to look at some games that we've played, some that we haven't played, some that each of us individually have played, and some we've played together.
Yeah. There's a lot that came out in the past 10 years, and it seems like more and more stuff does come out, and that's one of the things that we're gonna be talking about.
Yeah.
So what better place to start than the beginning? I
Yeah.
guess?
Beginning of time.
the beginning of the 2010s.
Yeah, the 2010s. Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about just like a couple of we're really gonna be talking about like a bunch of games that came out that year that we played or that we know about or had kind of had a big influence. We're also going to talk about some newsworthy stuff that happened in those years, and that's kind of how we're going to like sort of track those trends and stuff that we talked about at the top of the show. So in 2010, Mass Effect 2 came out.
Hey, let's start with a baseline. Where were you in 2010?
Where was I in 2010?
I had just graduated from college. Call me a boomer. Get it over now, Chris.
I was just graduating from high school.
Oh gosh.
I was still in the middle of college.
Yeah,
so
okay.
graduating soon, but yeah.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2009, December 2009. So like 2010,
Mhm.
my life literally started at the beginning of the decade,
Right.
which is like my adult life. Adult.
Yeah. As adult as you are, kind of straight out of college.
So like I remember getting out of college and I didn't have a job at the time because 2009 was notoriously bad for like a time to graduate.
Yep.
And so like I would do a weekly gig that would pay for basically me gaming the rest of the week. So
Okay.
there was a lot of stuff that came out that year, a lot of like things going on. And yeah, so like you started with Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, I did. I guess real quick we'll go around a little bit because like that year I was graduating high school and
Sure.
it was because I was graduating in May of 2010.
Mhm.
And so that was a really interesting time because suddenly my budget and availability for playing games had gone down a lot.
Oh yeah.
But there were a lot of things to come out. You said you were in the middle of college?
I was in the middle of college, so this would have been junior. No, not. So I 2000 and 2008, 2009 was freshman year. So 2009, 2010 would have been sophomore, and sophomore a little bit of junior. So at that time, yeah, a lot of it was League of Legends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So League of Legends just came out earlier, so playing a ton of that. I am definitely one of the old school League players. I have a lot of stories to tell from the early days. Also, just because we were just a bunch of guys in college, we played a lot of Smash Brothers Brawl.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And then one of the friends, Matt, one of our friends at college, he also was a big like Sega and Dreamcast fan, so he had a lot of old classic Sega games that we used to play. He's a big Sonic dude, so a good mix of like retro and whatever was popular at the time.
Mhm.
Crazy Taxi. That was earlier on. That was like 5 years before.
Power Stone
Yeah.
is the big one.
Ooh.
If
Okay.
any of you guys know about that one, that's an old school fighter.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it before.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. So that's kind of an established baseline of like
Where were they?
Yeah.
No,
And-
where are they? No.
that doesn't necessarily influence the type of games we were playing because
Sure.
like I don't know, games are for a lot of ages. Right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we'll talk about over the course of this is that at this point there's games for everybody.
Yep.
Right. And that kind of kept happening more and more and more through the 2010s. But yeah, so just like going through a list here. So Mass Effect 2, Red Dead Redemption, StarCraft 2.
I was playing a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of World of Warcraft, a lot of. I think
'Cause
Battlefield.
Cataclysm was 2009.
No, it's 2010. It was
Was
like the
that
start
October.
yeah, October. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which kind of revolutionized the game more or less because you had almost a start over of the world as we knew it.
Yeah.
A lot of updates that came to it.
Yeah.
So I was playing World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Battlefield, whatever version was out at that point.
Yep.
Um,
Battlefield Bad Company 2 is the only one I have any extended experience with.
yeah.
Because I had a friend of mine, he had it on his computer, and he's like, I don't really play it, so occasionally I would just hop on it and mess
Yeah.
around a little bit. I loved the medic. It's like everything I wanted. The medic was, it's like the only one that I know of Battlefield where the medic was also the heavy machine gunner.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
Yeah, it always had like the MG42 or whatever
Yeah.
it was.
So my fun thing was
Something
that I always was
stupid.
the crazy guy who ran in the middle of the battlefield defibrillating my friends. So like my fire team, the rest of my squad would be entirely dead. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they just get back up again. And my team just never died.
Yeah.
I marked everything, and it's like so I kept on getting bonus points from that,
Right.
which was clear.
Assists
And then they
and
die
everything.
like a few seconds later because they're still in the middle of a crossfire,
Yeah.
and I just come back and revive them again.
Yeah.
That's great.
We
That's
played a
funny.
lot of BFBC too,
Mhm.
and Vietnam after that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, beyond the scope of this thing, but I've had a lot of experience with like free-to-play-ish, like those first-person shooters kind of stuff.
Okay.
Friends and I, in the beginning of college, played a bunch of those. But I have a lot of stories amongst. If you ever play those really weird Korean-developed, like free-to-play-ish kind of things,
Yep.
I have some great stories from back then about just the crazy things I'd get up to, and
Yeah.
playing even in high school, like a bunch of Battlefield 1942, I think it was, just stuff from that. That's a story for another time.
So we haven't talked about you and guns. Did you ever get
Guns,
into
the
guns?
duel?
Yeah.
Yes, I knew
Okay,
about that.
all right.
Yes. Oh, wait.
That was
it because I mentioned it before? Or is this purely out of you?
This is out of this is for me.
Because,
I don't think
Oh,
you and I have ever talked about it.
I have
before.
it. Yeah, I have a slight history with guns. I wasn't full on K style or anything. Like this is we're gonna go deep.
We're getting deep.
We're gonna go
Yeah,
deep. I'm not.
yeah.
This is a game.
Guns the duel.
probably.
Guns with a Z. guns with a Z. Yes. There's one of those like there's really cheaply developed Korean MMO kind of deals, but it was
Okay.
trying to mix gunplay and like swords and all that other stuff.
Interesting.
So if you remember, what was that game on the Wii that had the guns and the katana thing? That was Red something. So there was
Wait,
one.
like No More Heroes?
No. It was one of like an early launch game for the Wii that was like all about like, hey, you could switch between like shooting a gun or wielding a sword.
Okay.
But the thing is, it was like that only as an MMO, like arena battler kind of thing.
Mm.
And they discovered a glitch where you can cancel certain bits of lag. And what happened, that development was called K-style. So people ended up like literally like zipping and flying across the map and just like doing all the most craziest Matrix level kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was all.
Yeah.
It was a whole thing.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We'd never like really like had a chance to talk about that before. I just wanted to make sure that somebody else knew that it existed.
Yes.
Because it's kind of hard to like find now.
Yes.
Guns with a Z.
Yeah, I thought it was some sort of like fever dream that I had.
It's close.
Yeah.
Like Shazam.
Yeah, basically. So what else came out that year? So that was Heavy Rain, who was that is a super narrative style game, and it's a game that I wish was better than it actually was.
Mm.
I have it, and I didn't get very far into it because it's QuickTime events the game.
Right.
Gotcha.
So
I think it's broader in the
Okay.
aspect of just the developer, Quantic Dream.
Right.
Because they're known for these super artsy, like narrative-heavy games.
Yeah.
So previously, Indigo Prophecy / Fahrenheit, depending on which region you were from, had garnered a lot of discussion. And so then Heavy Rain was the big one because it was released on the PS3 at the time. So it was like really pretty graphics and all that jazz. And if we jump ahead a little bit, latest was the Detroit, Become Human. And then there was one in between there, but I don't quite remember. It's like Beyond Two Souls, I think.
Was that them?
I think that's them. Yeah.
Okay, maybe. Yeah.
Anytime where you feel like a super artsy, fartsy, narrative-driven, QuickTime heavy
Yeah.
game.
But it's a AAA title.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that doesn't happen often in AAA titles, but they're able to keep getting funding for it, and they sell. They're really interesting games, and that's one of the things that I like about games is that they're not always the same. People have different definitions of like gameplay and how gameplay and narrative interact. And it's kind of like a spectrum where you're all narrative and all gameplay, right? And you can find stuff along that spectrum that mixes things in interesting ways.
Hey, Chris,
So-
ask me about indie games.
Yeah, we're getting there.
We're good.
Let me talk about Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Ooh, Alan Wake. We
so-
need to finish that, by the way.
We really do need to finish that. But yeah, so Alan Wake is a super great narrative-driven game where it's very meta because you play a horror author who goes on a vacation with his wife, and his wife ends up getting taken by some sort of supernatural force.
Very Stephen King, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very Stephen. It's like Stephen King, Twin Peaks, and it's very cool. And I wish that we were going to get a second one, but I don't think we ever are.
Yeah. Careful.
And so the conceit of it is that like you are running around this town trying to find your wife, but you keep finding pages of a novel that you supposedly wrote that is dictating what either has happened or is about to happen.
That's creepy.
Yeah, and so you can kind of like play around it and expect what's coming up, and it sometimes informs you of game mechanics and stuff. It was a really cool little game that came out on the 360 in 2010, and it got a like a mini sequel where they take the same thing but they turn it, instead of it being like you're in a novel that you wrote, you're in a like a Twilight Zone episode
Ooh.
with like time travel and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. It's not the sequel that people wanted or fans of the game wanted, but it's still really cool.
Yeah.
I played a lot of that. As I mentioned before, I missed like graduation practice to
Right.
to finish it.
Because you already knew how to walk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, like speaking of graduation, so like one of the cool things that happened in 2010,
Yeah.
for me, was Steam for Mac. So like it came out in 2010. I had a Mac because I was doing video production, and what better way? Because I think they had already introduced Boot Camp. They had already introduced the idea of being able
Parallels and
to
stuff, right?
parallels and everything like that. So like the way I was living my life at that time was I would reboot into PC to go play stuff, and then like go back to Mac for creative stuff and things like that. Because really, Adobe Premiere, Adobe Creative Suite wasn't as powerful. It didn't run as well on like the Mac platform, and I was
On Windows or Mac?
on Windows. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was also like, all my editing software was on Mac, so I had to. And so like everything from CS Source to Half-Life to like basically the whole Valve platform,
Yeah.
the development, like their games, was available on Steam suddenly, which was like, for me, a huge big deal because that was really the first time Macs had become viable gaming PCs.
Yeah.
And that was even still kind of early because, there wasn't a whole lot outside of that. But like from there, in the next few years, you had stuff like Origin that launched. You have
Team Fortress 2.
yeah, like
Nice.
all that stuff. Like all of the different developers, different platforms are suddenly putting out their own games for Mac.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, speaking of Steam, so there was this game that I used to play with a bunch of my high school buddies. But like after I had graduated, we all reconnected and played Alien Swarm. I don't know if
My friends and I played a little bit of that
Yeah.
too. And I remember the hats they gave you for TF2 and from playing that too.
so. This was like this
What was this
weird third party. Did you ever play this?
I did not.
Third
no.
person.
It was a
squad-
top-down shooter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
top-down squad-based shooter. So it was like four
Oh,
people
okay.
running around, almost sort of like a MOBA, but
It was more. Actually, I would argue more like top-down Left 4 Dead.
okay, yeah, no, that's fair.
Okay.
But with aliens instead
But with
of zombies.
aliens, yeah, instead of like alien insects instead of zombies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And with little sci-fi settings. So I remember I played like the engineer, who could set up like a little turret.
Yep.
And the worst part was there was friendly fire, and I had a friend of mine who was hyper-aggressive
right.
shotgunner, and he kept on running
Oh my
into
gosh.
the thing. I'm like, no, stop running
Yeah.
in front of my shots.
Yeah.
Everybody, just cover a sector.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, so that was fun. And honestly, I've looked for that game recently. It kind of disappeared off of Steam. Like it just it disappeared out of my games list, my library. I mean, I think I can still. I've seen it like once or twice.
Right.
But even just trying to figure out the name of that game for the longest time took me a while.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
speaking of party games,
Speaking of party games, so this was really the last time for maybe like 6 years or so that there would be a giant install for rhythm games,
Mhm.
right? So Rock Band 3 was the last Rock Band game to come out until 4 in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And it had its own like weird little ecosystem because it had the creators.
Wasn't
I
Rock Band
can't remember what
Beatles
it's called.
came out a little bit afterwards too?
Say what?
Rock Band Beatles?
Rock Band Beatles came out right before it.
Okay.
Yeah. Beatles Rock Band, I think, is technically what it's called.
Something
But
like
this one had its own uh, store where people could upload their own charts for
Right.
songs that they had the rights to. So you would get
Yeah.
bands uploading their own songs, which was really cool and really pumped some life into the game. But you just wouldn't see it anywhere after maybe 2012.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it was just sort of like the last time you would see it, and part of it is because Activision and oh no, never, nope. Who's the company that did the Tony Hawk games? Neversoft.
Oh gosh.
Ooh, I think so, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. When they took over the Guitar Hero franchise, they started doing them every single year and sometimes multiple releases a year.
Okay.
And that sort of just like oversaturated the market and
Yeah.
got people tired of rhythm games really quickly. That said, you would still get like the occasional like dance party game for Just Dance
Yeah.
or one of the other ones.
I mean, those have always been big in Japan too, in the arcades. DDR has never really died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ideally, it never will because that's just
They
its
did-
own little institution.
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
put out a new version of it too. Like,
Yeah.
or they are always releasing new
Right.
stuff for that.
DDR,
Yeah.
Beat Mania, they have the Taiko drum stuff in Japan. Like,
Yeah.
there's tons of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
It's alive and well in Japan.
yeah.
Neversoft is
And
correct.
it was
Yeah.
Neversoft? Okay, yeah. So when they took over Guitar Hero 3 in 2008, I think it was, and after
Mhm.
that, it was just a lot of stuff coming out every single year, and people got tired of it. And
Yep.
I don't blame them. And honestly, we still play Rock Band 3. That's the version.
Yeah.
That's the version that we play.
Because we just have so many songs for it.
Yeah.
You have so many songs for it.
Yeah. There's a really lively custom songs community now.
Yeah.
That isn't stuff that you have the rights for, so you don't have to pay for it. But there's all sorts of stuff that you can get, and
Whereas
it's really cool.
in the indie space, I remember at the time when it was still big, there was the indie version of it called Frets on Fire.
Ooh.
So that was
yeah.
that was really
Red's on
neat
Fire still going.
because
Yeah.
they used the F1 keys, so you could literally hold your keyboard like this
Great.
onto the F keys, and then the space bar is just strums. You go
That's
as you go.
perfect.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. Frets on Fire. There are a couple of other like PC clones basically
Right.
that exist, but it was a really interesting just like institution for the last half of the aughts,
Sure.
and it just disappeared.
Yep.
But something that came up and sort of like took its place, or not really took its place, but just got started rising up was mobile games.
Right.
Yeah. So like even the Rock Band mobile stuff, there was
Mhm.
that existed, or Guitar Hero that was you could play on your phone, and then there were a bunch of other little like music games that there were like Piano Hero or something like that.
Yeah.
Everything
could do.
hero of some sort.
Yeah. But like one thing that stood out to me as far as like the advent of the 2010s was suddenly you have an explosion of iOS games, Android games, and we'll even talk about it later. There's stuff for like Fire OS and Windows Phone, but like I think a game that kind of kicked off that whole scene was not even Angry Birds, but Plants vs Zombies was probably like the biggest seller of 2010 for mobile games.
I mean, that started off as a Flash game, right? It's like
Yeah.
this beyond the scope of this particular podcast, but Flash games. Like if you're gonna go to indie games, I can go all the way back to Newgrounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that sometime.
Newgrounds, Addicted Games. Oh, I am
Newgrounds and the Toonami games.
I
Yeah.
am so ready for that. I am
AddictedGames.com.
so ready for that.
Yeah.
Like this is me getting to wax poetic, or like just
Yeah.
go on about like my history. Like I remember this, I remember that, and chart like then this and that and that. Oh, it'd be so good.
Yeah.
And I don't even consider myself like too deep into any of that kind of stuff either. Like I was not big into Newgrounds, but I just knew of it and hung around a lot.
Mhm.
But yeah. Oof.
Yeah. So there's also one other big game that sort of came out at the time that did some really interesting things, not necessarily in the gaming space, but in the entertainment space around games.
Right.
Yeah, the entertaining of the entertainment.
Yep.
So
video games.
Amnesia: The Dark Descent is the first indie game that we're really going to talk about.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
It
Plants vs
was
Zombies was fairly indie.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Plants vs Zombies was very indie. But Amnesia is this great
horror game.
horror game. Yeah, no, it's. I was going to see if there's any other modifier I could put, but no, it's a horror game. Um, and it sort of launched a bunch of like YouTube careers, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Markiplier is the big one, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, yeah, just like people like just reaction videos. That was kind of around the time that sort of started.
Yeah.
There's just a whole bunch of people just absolutely freaking out because it's you're being chased by a scary monster. It's like Mr. X in Resident Evil, right? It's
Yeah.
similar kind of deal.
Yeah. Was that kind of like around the same time that basically all of these let's watch people play games sort of launched? Was
Yeah.
around that time.
I mean, it wasn't quite the level of streaming just yet, like
Yeah.
Twitch. But the thing is, it was just you see like viral clips of stuff where people recording their friends playing,
Right.
and it's just like hearing people just where it's like, oh no, just hiding in the corner and stuff. It's just I remember there's one particular one that's like really well known that's always passed around for the longest time back in the day. I'll see if I can dig it up sometime.
Okay.
Yeah, if you do, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll find it. Well, it'll be in the show notes.
Yeah. And then Lou, talk to me about indie games.
Yeah. So the ones we have of note, at least releasing in 2010, is Limbo and Super Meat Boy. But that's very much on the tail end of the whole like renaissance, starting from Xbox Live Arcade. So the big ones that are a little bit before that were Braid previously and Castle Crashers. Castle Crashers is interesting because that started off on something from Newgrounds.
Oh yeah.
The David Fulp, he did Alien Hominid, My Dad and Me, and a couple of other things on Newgrounds. But his art style, he and the folks he worked with broke off and made themselves a game company and released Castle Crashers, which is still big. So that Limbo became the super artsy, dark kind of like slightly pseudo horror platformer kind of deal about a little kid lost in the woods trying to rescue his sister.
Yeah.
Super Meat Boy.
Great little game, all on grayscale.
Very atmospheric, and it's just it really invigorated a lot of talk about just like the feelings you get behind it because you're like an innocent little kid and there are horrors in the woods. The night is dark and full of terrors. But and Super Meat Boy is the big, like super challenging. It's the hard, like the Kaizo Mario kind of deal where things were going on. I mean, Kaizo Mario, I think were still mods and videos going around that time too. So what is it? I Want to Be the Guy or whatever the previous versions of that.
The Boshi.
I Want to Be the Boshi, yeah. And those series of like Super Kaizo games were also somewhere around that period. But Super Meat Boy is one of the ones that broke out in mainstream popularity. Just again, so people talk about Braid, Castle Crashers, Limbo, Super Meat Boy being like the first wave of the big indie revival or the mainstreaming of indie games.
Yeah.
And a lot of them started from the Xbox Live Arcade.
Yeah.
The Summer of Indies or something that they did, and this is what you'll start seeing this a lot more as we talk. Like that really kicked off people realizing that indie games can be a viable path to release something and be good and make money off of it.
Right. So that sort of takes us into 2010 or 2011. Lou, you want to talk about some of the games that were out in there?
So some of the big ones we got Batman Arkham City. So Arkham Asylum was a little bit earlier than that.
2008, I want to say.
Okay, but it got really, really well liked, well reviewed, lots of success, and the next big one they decided to go crazy with it and go Arkham City.
Yeah. So City was the second one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was like the first real open world version. I mean, Arkham Asylum had some sort of open worldness, but it was more of a partially linear.
It felt more like a Metroidvania.
Yeah, where the open world is backtracking.
Right.
It's not necessarily
exactly.
Like there's more stuff to do. It's just that there was stuff that was already there that you couldn't get to.
Right. But yeah, it was huge, sprawling. Again, really well reviewed, well loved. I mean, there's a lot you could say about just how what is it? Something Full Moon Studios, I believe, is the I think how they basically revitalized and created the free flow combat system that you see being aped a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was a huge
really good.
It is really good. And they combined that with all the open world stuff we see. I mean, I guess going on later, you look at Ubisoft and all their Far Cries. I mean, Far Cry 2 was definitely another big inspiration and definitely, I think, one of the earliest big open world games that really set off the trend. But it's the collectathons. You just start seeing them more and more and more with the success of that in Arkham City. You just lots of stuff to collect.
Yeah.
So back on the Steam train, we got Portal 2 came out in 2011, which was like that was so much fun. And what I loved most about Portal 2 was the co-op game where you could just connect with somebody and do like all these stupid shenanigans of throwing portals everywhere. And the fact that game it's still pretty lively as far as the community is concerned. And we're talking 9 years later where people are still making puzzles and maps for it that you can download and play.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those like lasting games. But I don't know, it was fun. So also in 2011 was the official launch of, or the conversion more or less of, I forget what it was called before, but the EA like store,
Yeah, the EA
or
store, I think.
EA Downloader, I think is what it's called,
Yeah.
to Origin, which opened up again. So that launched on PC and Mac, and I think even on Linux too, launching
Oh.
like a slew of games that you could any games that was like compatible with the system that they had kind of pre-made. So like everything from The Sims to, they brought back Battlefield 1942, Battlefield 2142, Battlefield 2, 3, whatever they were on at that
Yeah.
point.
2342.
Yeah.
Whichever.
Yeah.
2x42. You're probably right.
Yeah, but back in like Steam, there was, I remember playing LA Noire a lot, which was one of those like fun RPG. Also back in like the open world too.
Yeah.
Sort of in this, because was that by Rockstar?
Rockstar.
Yeah.
Yep. LA Noire was also super influential because there was one of the first games that did like real, like extensive facial capture
Yeah.
for performances, because you're a detective and you need to be able to determine whether people are lying by watching their faces for tells and stuff.
Right.
So they went whole hog in terms of like doing the facial captures you see, to see like the dots all over their faces.
Yeah,
and
I think
getting
I
them to
remember
do
reading
that.
a stat where it had like 20 times as many muscles as any other game, or even like something more outrageous than that.
Yeah.
That they had built into the faces in that game, which is fascinating to me. The fact that suddenly you're able to render these things, because it wasn't like you were talking about QuickTime, whatever it was. This was like legit rendered in real time.
Just as a basis of comparison, cross media, when did Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, come out?
2011.
So this is
Oh,
roughly
yeah.
the
Either
same
2010
period,
or 2011.
right? Where technology got far enough where these kind of rendering stuff. Because lately I've been watching a lot of like Corridor Digital's VFX artists react to stuff, and so they've been doing stuff like, they recently did a whole section on the Lord of the Rings and how all their special effects held up, and they were working with like 2010 era computer graphics and how it still holds up today and all the tricks they were doing.
Yeah.
So
like
like
the digital.
Yeah, so it's just like it's just on my mind now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Just like how special effects and how that ties into how video games are using the tools that movies and cinema are using to make them more immersive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's one of those interesting trends, and you'll see it in the games more and more and more as time goes on.
I mean, the next game on our list, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that just a Michael Bay movie?
Basically,
Right?
pretty much.
I mean,
Man, now I want to go back and play it.
I mean, that and like Uncharted, right, where they really go for the full-on cinematic set pieces. That was the thing you were seeing in these games, where it's just, it's all about the big bombastic single-player experience. Well, I mean, obviously Call of Duty was very heavily a multiplayer, but in the single-player sections and all these action games, you see them going for these big set pieces where it's like, exciting things that are going on that are sort of scripted, and you just sort of go on there and it's like, whoa, it's like a ride.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So there was also Temple Run that came out that year. I'm not going to spend too much time on it.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
mobile
back
games.
to mobile games.
Just another mobile game
But
that was kind of a big deal at the
yeah,
time.
one of the things I was mentioning earlier is like I was at Main Event, which is like a Dave and Buster's type entertainment space arcade, and they have like these big arcade versions of Temple Run that you can play.
I've seen those before, yeah.
Not only just Temple Run, but like clones of it too.
Yeah.
It's like
I've seen a
apparently it's
Flappy Bird
popular.
arcade machine at like Dave and Buster's.
Exactly. Same thing.
Yeah, which is absolutely insane. So onto indie games a little bit that year. Bastion,
First published Super Giant.
Yeah.
These guys, put themselves on the map.
They really did. So Supergiant Games first outing, Bastion. It's a great little action platformer. Not really platformer.
Not really platformer. Isometric brawler kind of deal.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's like a top-down 3D sort of world.
Old school Diablo-esque kind of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never played it. I don't think I've ever heard of it.
No, gorgeous art style, and the big thing they were talking about is it's like it's a post-apocalyptic thing where you wake up and you realize the world's been torn apart and you need to find your way back to the Bastion. And throughout the whole thing, you're being narrated by this super sweet, I can't remember the guy's name anymore, but the thing is like Darren Korb. No, that's the guy who composed it.
Yeah.
But his like good friend and roommate this is super deep, velvety voice narrating everything he does. It's like this like gravelly, like Western, like Clint Eastwood-esque kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like the kid finds a hammer. It's like, and he tells stories. It's just like I remember back. It's like, or when he goes to a bar, he's like, yeah, the people of Ceylondia would come here and get a drink after the long day's work.
Yeah.
And he reminisces about all the
awesome.
stuff. Like the narrator was a character in there narrating
good.
the stuff that you did. It was so cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was a huge game, but I like if indie games weren't on people's radar at the time, Bastion really did it.
Okay.
Was it another big one? Like this is just the things are just going to be piling up.
Yeah.
And I think Steam had something to do with that as far as like we talked about the green light program a little. Green
Light, yeah.
Green light program a little bit. But even some of the they started introducing these almost pre-release type games,
Right.
where you could buy into a game before it was released, but they had published it on Steam. Some like I'm specifically thinking about Kerbal Space Program because
Right.
that was something that you could buy before it was actually released and almost beta test it for it.
Early access, yes, it was starting.
Yeah, it was like an early access thing.
Because originally they were trying the episodic games, the Half-Life episode stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like back in the day, and that didn't seem to work out too well. Like people were trying.
We still don't have Half-Life 3.
We have Half-Life 2 episode 1, Half-Life 2 episode 2. We just can't reach that 3.
Yep.
But yeah, Kerbal Space Program is probably the biggest one. There's probably a few others that we're missing off the top of our heads where like early access was a big thing. Oh well, I mean Minecraft, right? But there's like Minecraft was an alpha that was going on for the longest time in 2010.
Yeah.
It didn't quite officially release until 2011.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like it was almost because it was like the end of 2009 is when they first kind of published it, and then 2010 it was in alpha, and then 2011 was when it launched.
The official release.
It officially launched in 2011. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've played literally, I'm not joking, a small amount of Minecraft. I never got into it as much as a lot of people did.
My roommates in college played a crap ton of it, and
Really?
they just had Minecraft servers, and I was like, all right, you guys have your fun, whatever.
Yeah. See, I was more into like the Kerbal Space Program or even like The Sims at the time.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna build something, I don't know, something that's a little bit more less cartoony.
Right.
Not that I mean, Sims is definitely a cartoon, but
right.
It's like life simulator.
Yeah.
Versus Minecraft is like it's more like building Legos or building your own world.
Right. Yeah. For me, this was either mixing between League, Smash, and then my undying love of indie games. So, I mean, Binding of Isaac was in there, but one of the ones I remember that was really getting a lot of talk, probably not a lot of people remember it anymore, but it was called To the Moon. It still is like one of the crazy, like really well-written, emotional little story about like, it's a world where like later on, scientists have discovered a way to like alter people's memories. But the thing is that it kills them in the process. So they only offer this to the terminally ill.
Okay.
So the story is that these two technicians are coming to help alter the memories of this one man who I think it was like wants to forget his wife or something. It was like something really traumatic happened in his past. And so they're exploring his past memories. And then all of a sudden they realize like what's going and trying to give. Oh, no, he wanted to go to the moon. That's what it was. Because his wife died and that was his wife's dream to go to the moon. So the thing is that they give you so you can die peacefully and happy. So they're altering your memories at the end. And then as you explore, you realize the whole story about like, oh, his wife like had low key like autism. It was on the spectrum and you didn't realize it. And then the entire time, the reason why she wanted to go to the moon was it was like a metaphor for them like meeting each other and falling in love because they would like, she would fold origami rabbits to him for him. And then as she was going like through dementia or something, she was slowly more and more like relapsing. And that was the only memory she held on to was the rabbit, because the rabbit on the moon, just origami rabbits, and the fact that she wanted to bring him to the moon so that way, there was some way of like trying to connect to each other. And in the end, it was just this very touching story. And I do have to, and the guy still releases more stories, and I've been meaning to play more games from the guy. But I just remember a lot of people were just talking about that game, To the Moon. Great music soundtrack too.
Speaking of great music soundtracks. Have you ever played Skyrim?
Let's talk about this little game called The Elder Scrolls 5.
Okay, so like my first
Skyrim.
introduction to Skyrim was Toby, what's his face, that did the literal movie trailers. He was like, "Now you're on a dragon, something. Man, I wish I could remember it, but like, that was great. I loved the literal movie trailers, but Fus Roda.
Yep.
Man, that game is like, it's still around. People are still modding it and playing it.
I mean, that's what gave it legs, right? The mod scene.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
you
totally.
see like Thomas the Tank Engine flying through the air, while like a My Little Pony, just like
It's a giant macho man, Randy Savage, like sound effects on every Dragon Shop. Like, not only is it being modded, it's being re-released.
Yeah.
Constant,
right,
right?
all
yeah.
the time. Like
Yep.
it was a launch title on the Switch, which launched in 2017. We'll talk about that
Forgot.
later. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of a big deal. It has a bunch of staying power that I did not expect
Mm-hmm.
coming from that game when I played it initially. And yeah, it was
So like,
big deal.
yeah. So like, I think it was kind of the advent. We talked about it a little bit with LA Noire and even Arkham City. Just the open world concept of video games and how it kind of introduced this. It kind of introduced an idea where the main storyline was an option.
Right.
It's like, yeah, there was Grand Theft Auto 3 and 4 that I forget when 4 came out. It had to be before then.
It had to be. It was before that.
Yeah. Because that was when the PS3 launched in 2006, 7, 5, whatever it was.
Yep.
Where you really didn't have to play the storyline to play the main quest line to advance your game. You could still have fun with it.
Yeah.
Which was fascinating. I think we'll get into more of it a little bit too with down the line with some other games. But
I feel bad forgetting about Grand Theft Auto when I was going on about Far Cry. So.
Oh yeah.
Because it's never really my jam. But
Yeah.
But I think that honestly defined the teens for me as far as the games that I enjoyed.
The open world stuff.
Open world was fun. What I don't like about open world is the massive amount of things that are completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about you, Mr. 2018 Spider-Man.
Rip.
But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, for sure. And sort of like taking that to the extreme was careful, buddy.
Doge.
Was Dark Souls, which came out that year. It is the Dark Souls of Dark Souls games. And it's if you've never played them, they're super open world, they're totally non-linear.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very little like actual story direction because like you have a goal in the game or in each game in the Dark Souls series, but there's no there are barely cutscenes. There's no there's almost none NPC dialogue. There's
one of the big things, is how they do their lore because it's all based on the items and the little snippets that you pick up as you go.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah, and so it sort of like launched this really interesting community of people trying to like decode the stories that Miyazaki, who's the game's creator, was trying to tell. And
you see that influence a lot nowadays too, as well.
Yeah, for sure. There's so many things from the combat that gets taken and put into a bunch of other games. And I talked about this on the last episode when I was talking about the Polygon video. Let's talk about Dark Souls one last time. Wait, no, where are you going?
We'll keep talking.
Yeah. And which if you haven't watched is really good. And we're barely touching on Dark Souls here, but it was extremely influential and such a really cool way to sort of buck some trends and take other trends to their natural extremes, because there's like they're in the game, like there are no there's only a save point system. And so there's no checkpoints, which was not something that was happening at the time, right? Because a lot of the action-driven narrative games all had checkpoint systems, and it was
anti-frustration features.
Yeah, that's true. But Dark Souls is very much about frustration, and sort of
do it again until you get it right.
Yeah, it's very much a practice more than it is a game, which you kind of I didn't really understand until I started playing them. And honestly, like no one had ever pitched them to me like that before.
When you put it that way, then that makes me parallels back to the old school arcade games.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
I'm drawing parallels to like old school Contra, right? Where it comes down to muscle memory. There's shmups, which again, ask me about shmups sometime. Full of hell stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just interesting that you just trigger that parallel. But go on.
And that's the idea, is that we're talking about these games in a way that you guys may not have heard about them.
Can I interrupt you before we move on? So Dark Souls, like, is there somewhere I could go to watch somebody play this game?
Oh yeah. We plug ourselves at the end. What are you on about?
No, okay. So like you streamed this for forever, right?
Yeah.
Dark Souls.
Not Dark Souls, Bloodborne.
Didn't you stream Dark Souls early on?
No, I thought about it.
Oh, okay.
We have it installed for me to eventually stream the original Dark Souls.
Gotcha.
I just haven't gotten around to it because it's
Okay. I
time
thought you had
consuming.
done it at some point.
No, I hadn't. I really wanted to.
Well, in the future.
In the future, and that's one of the things is that there's actually
the year
one of the big
2020.
things about Dark Souls that sort of launched its community were other people playing it on Twitch and
Yeah.
YouTube and using YouTube to sort of pull out the lore bits and discuss theories and
Oh,
stuff.
Yeah.
And so it has its own little YouTube video production
There are full
market.
channels dedicated to the lore. I
Yeah.
mean, I know I've been pointed to them.
Vatividia and
Yeah, I've been pointed to them before. I don't know their names off the top of my head.
yeah, they're super fascinating and really interesting, and they're not always right, and they're not always what you would interpret, but they're super cool.
Yeah.
And eventually, if you want to see us stream Dark Souls, I might do that.
Just try and get that plug in there.
Yeah. We plug ourselves at the end. Be
I
patient.
know,
Be
but you got to
patient.
do it all the time.
All the time. All the time. Yes, this is Chris from the C&C Power Hour.
Oh, hey, Chris.
Hi,
From the C&C
from the
Power.
C&C Power
My
Hour.
name's Andy from the C&C Power Hour.
Hi, Andy from the C&C Power Hour.
Over here's Lou from the C&C Power Hour.
Doctor. That's us right now.
So, okay, we got a couple more things to cover
things for
in
2011.
2011. Star Wars.
Star Wars. Star Wars: The Old Republic. It was this is the first in the modern post World of Warcraft MMOs.
Gosh.
And it was it was going to be this huge World of Warcraft killer, and because that was the goal at the time, was to take down World of Warcraft, and we sort of walked away from that after
Right.
so many other things have failed to become well, let's just make a game that other people can play perpetually online.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where the MMO space is now, but really at the time it was just we're going to be like WoW but better.
Right.
And it was we're going to be like Star Wars WoW, which is kind of what ended up happening. It was World of Warcraft, but really the version of World of Warcraft that existed 6 years prior to its
Right.
existence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess 5, because it was playing World of Warcraft: The Burning Crusade. So if you've never played World of Warcraft, it comes out in expansion packs, and they sort of define eras of the game,
Sure.
right? And the Burning Crusade was its second most popular expansion, but it was when it was still pretty hard and pretty grindy to get what you want.
Yeah. It was the first expansion too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was the first expansion, and that's sort of the systems that Star Wars: The Old Republic took, and those are the underlying gameplay systems, and then they put it with the Knights of the Old Republic decision tree and
Right.
Mhm.
all that stuff.
They tried to do the whole BioWare kind of level of, oh man, yeah, there's so much to talk about, how BioWare influenced a whole bunch of things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how it went, and it failed miserably.
Right.
I think it's still available as a freeware thing.
Mhm.
I'm not actually so sure. I haven't checked into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of it for games. We have a big esports thing to talk about.
Yeah, so 2011 was a period when esports really started getting big. The Dota 2, their international, was the first big esports championship with over $1 million prize pool. I know that League of Legends, this is technically the season 2 League of Legends World Championship, but that was when it really got big because they sold out the Staples Center.
Oh,
That
wow.
it was big.
Huh.
And there's
Yeah.
there's still a lot of memes from there. They had some broadcasting troubles where the whole broadcast, the servers pooped themselves, and so there was literally a 6-hour long delay. And you hear the stories from the shoutcasters who had to fill in the time in there.
Yeah.
And during the interstitials, there was this one song that just kept on playing on the loop because that was their break music for that one thing. But it got played so long because it only got extended. It's called Silver Scrapes, and that is one of the biggest memes in League of Legends history. And I remember listening to that back in the day, and it was those were some interesting times. Again, beyond the scope of this particular discussion, but old school League stories is fantastic.
That's funny.
All right, moving on. 2012.
2012.
Big thing is we have on top of the thing is the release of the Wii U.
The what?
The Wii U. Wii U.
And
Wii
the
U.
who?
Wii U.
And that's all we have to say about that, because there was nothing else to talk about for the Wii U.
But you know what also happened in 2012? I'm going to skip down here for a second. Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
So this is where, so I had this gaming group of, we called ourselves a clan because we were like, gaming troop or fire team actually before you guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
That I used to play like everything online with. So it was everything from Call of Duty, Battlefield, World of Warcraft. Mass Effect 3 was like the other game that we played because it was just the multiplayer aspect of it. You could play against other people, or there was even like a co-op. You play against the computer of like this team of 4 to 6 players or something like that. That was huge for me. That was like a weird. I'd never played 1 or 2. This is my first introduction to Mass Effect, and this is a theme that continued through the teens, where I was playing the like 3rd and 4th version of games.
Yeah.
And then there was the whole outcry over like the ending. Of
Yeah.
Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
That
guys
was
had any.
that was it. It was a whole kerfluffle. Yeah, no, it was a great game. A couple of other great games that came out that year. Dishonored.
Sorry. Did we have Deus Ex Human Revolution somewhere in here?
We did not. When was that? Was it
Should be-
12?
It's somewhere in that period because I was just thinking at the time there's a big discussion on the revival of the systemic games
Yeah.
that they were coming out. So that like Thief had a reboot sometime.
Yeah, Thief.
Yeah, Thief had a reboot at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Hitman reboot is coming up soon in like 2016 or something because this was Hitman Absolution was 2012, I believe.
Yeah.
Because I was looking that up briefly on my own for my own kind of thing. But yeah, it started the revival of the systemic game, which I will tie eventually to like Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild that we see today.
Yeah.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. Just a bit. Just to run down a couple of other things that had come out that year. So Borderlands 2, XCOM Enemy Unknown, Diablo 3, which was a huge release.
Yeah, we played a lot of that.
Yeah, I played a lot of that.
I remember I played it a bit, but only ever single player. I don't think I ever played much multiplayer with my friends.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was really interesting in the idea of like an international or like an international auction house that you could also like transfer stuff to and from for real money.
That was that was whole interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that lasted a total of like 6 months. And
But that was also the first Diablo 3 in like 12 years, basically.
Yeah,
yeah, it was the first Diablo in years.
Yeah, probably 10 years, which is, we see that too with Borderlands, where the next one came out 7 years later. Yeah, so then Far Cry 3. Did either of you play Far Cry 3?
No, I always wanted to.
Yeah.
I played a add-on pack for Far Cry 3 that really used engine, Blood Dragon.
Yes.
And it's like this super like if it was like the 80s vision of the future on steroids.
Yes. Retro futuristic 80s,
Perfect.
like neon drenched kind of thing. It is literally like a fever dream.
Yeah. No, it was one of my favorite things to come out in like the Far Cry universe. This was really the only thing that I played.
It was Kung Fury before Kung Fury.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And which was almost around the same time, as it was another 2 years or so. So Kung Fury came out, but yeah. So that sort of existed. You wanted to, I'll let you take Fez.
Yeah, Fez.
I want to talk about Journey.
Right. So indie game. Okay, sure. So the indie games I was mentioning previously, it's like
this is not going to be an hour long.
No.
we're way past that already.
Yeah,
it's fine.
So I was talking about previously like Braid, Super Meat Boy. They were really big in the indie game space, but it was specifically because they were covered in Indie Games the movie. There's a whole movie about these auteur indie developers, and I know Fez was one of them. Fez was one of the ones that were featured, and Fez finally came out, and I adore Fez. It is a mind-bending puzzle platformer because you are, platformer is a 2D space, right? But you end up getting the power of the Fez, and then the hat, and then you are able to manipulate space. So now all of a sudden you realize the world is two-dimensional. You can rotate the world, and as things rotate, like platforms get rotated into different positions. So originally, you see something that's really far away, but when you shift it 90 degrees, you realize they're right next to each other, and then you can then jump onto that platform and then rotate back, and now you're far away again.
Yeah.
So it is mind-bending, and there are so many hidden secrets in there too, in terms of like other layers. And like there's like the basics cubes that you're collecting, but then there's like these hidden shadow cubes, and like if you want to complete Fez, it is a real effort. And there's like puzzles that people were working out that like people were still. It took like a decade before people finally realized, like, or not a decade, but like it took lots of years.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just even have to just data mine it before like I don't know how to figure out this puzzle. Like how do we unlock this stupid thing? and to get it. But yeah, Fez is a very interesting game, definitely worth checking out.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
I'm interject here real
Go
quick.
for it.
So I got really lucky because this game came out in 2012. There's a game called The Room.
Not the
Which-
movie.
Yeah, not the movie,
No, not the movie.
and not the Silent Hill game.
I
I
don't
feel like I've
think
heard of this
they're
one.
related. But
Is
this
this one of those
this
escape
was
room?
it was yes. It
Okay.
was like a iOS based specifically it first launched on the iPad because you needed the whole like landscape thing that you could see everything that was going on in the room. But it was like sort of a horror escape the room type thing. It just reminded me of that where you were constantly rotating or moving pieces to look at them a little bit differently
Right.
and just be able to I mean, as with any kind of escape the room game
Yeah.
where you're looking under the chair a little bit differently, or you're
Yeah,
you're moving a piece, rotating something that you don't normally rotate in real life. Like
The 3DS was out by now, right?
yes.
yeah, because that was like
Because when you start talking about that, there was a lot of those
Yeah.
on the Nintendo DS at the time. Phoenix Wright in particular.
Yeah.
They originally was just a port of all the Game Boy Advance games, but
gotcha.
they had an additional trial at the very end that took advantage of the Nintendo DS's capabilities, which included you like rotating pieces to find like fingerprints and all that other
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, I just brought to mind that bit.
No, it was sort of this like magical universe that you existed in. You were in a room and then you kind
Yeah.
of made your way inside a castle and
Yeah.
you like were transported inside that castle.
I mean, that draws parallels back to like the old Myst series.
Yeah.
And then the escape room stuff. Because I remember there was a whole. I remember coming across a little bit of a history of like all these escape room games.
Oh yeah.
I remember playing a few myself. They used to be like flash games, and they just
Remember like
ended
the
up
Crimson Room or something like that?
something like that.
Yeah.
These just puzzly kind of games that just came up. Yep.
Yeah. So interesting. I didn't know that was when that came out. I heard you talk about it before, but I
Yeah.
never actually really knew what
And
that
there's,
was.
there's I think there's a version 2 and 3 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Too. And it has since released on Windows and the Switch. So.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. So the next one I kind of want to talk about is one that is very near to my heart because it's like it's less of a game and more of an experience. It's called Journey,
Yep.
and it won all sorts of awards that year.
Genova Chen. I'm familiar with Genova Chen earlier from his indie stuff before he made it big with Journey. So
Yeah.
go ahead with this one, but I can provide some more context and history.
Yeah. So the idea is it's very much a like silent walk through the hero's journey, which is
Yes.
its own problem for me. But that's a whole other.
I can go on and on about the hero's journey and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a big student of like literature and storytelling and stuff. So this is
Right. Yeah. And so like it really sort of like takes you through that, and you play a character that you interact with other. You can. So you're silent. You
You're
can
a
make a couple
pilgrim.
of.
and the entire purpose is for you to reach the top of this mountain.
Yeah.
It is a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Effectively, and you're going through all these trials and all this stuff, going through all these environments, and maybe you find somebody to go take that journey with you.
Yeah. At the time there was like drop in drop out co-op play. And,
Well, that's the secret hidden part, right?
Well, I guess so because it was really interesting. I mean, it's not a thing now.
Right.
But,
I mean, this is like Rosebud is a sled kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you're a pilgrim. You start off traveling across this desert, and all you see is the top of this mountain and this beacon on top, and that is your whole goal: is to reach the top of that mountain.
Mhm.
And so, throughout that journey, right, you're met with other fellow pilgrims, and you could help each other. And like, there's very non-violent, non-confrontational, and the whole thing was that the only way you can communicate was singing this one note. This like whoop, kind of like ping at
Yeah.
them, and like whole thing you realize you can communicate with the other person, trying to figure it out and helping each other, and throughout the whole entire thing you're like encouraging each other to get to the top of that mountain. And again, this is a huge allegory of the hero's journey. So you finally reach there, and at the end they reveal to you, hey, this is who you were playing with. And it was a big shock at the time. People were like, oh, this wasn't an AI that was helping you out, this was another human being. And it was a way to facilitate communication, because there was no other way. There was no chat, there was no voice chat, there was no way to text. All you had was like your emotions and that one singing note that you can do, like trying to figure out how to communicate and get people to either solve the platforming puzzles and do that whole thing. And it was one of those like moving experiences that people have, which is just pure connection.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was really cool. It was only maybe like 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Like you could finish it very quickly.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't know what you were doing, and it's just it's I like a lot of like games as art games.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the biggest for me.
Right. Journey definitely. Yeah, and what's really cool is that like if you manage to complete the game and maybe like 100% it, maybe I think what it was, you get a white cloak
Yep.
because you start off with a pilgrim and you're like this dusty reddish cloak,
Mhm.
and then as you play it again, then you can be the guy guiding the next thing. So it's a cyclical nature. It's a very huge metaphor about the hero's journey is always cyclical. You got to go back and you take the boon of the hero's journey. You take your boon and return it to your community. So then again, so you take the next generation of people onto that journey. And
Huh.
so yeah, there's so many layers of metaphor in Journey. It's great.
Yeah, it was a fantastic game. Just huge at the time.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's like swept awards
And it
shows and
recently
stuff.
came out on PC, so you get beautiful 4K, like the gorgeous
Did it
sand.
really?
Yes,
Ooh. I didn't
gorgeous
realize
sand
that.
physics in 4K.
Making
Like
a note.
it's
Yeah.
very pretty.
I didn't realize that it had a release. I thought it was just done. I was like,
No,
well,
it was PS3, then it came out on PS4,
Yeah.
which I encouraged my friend. I literally paid my friend to buy it so I could play through it on the
Huh.
PS4. And then recently, I know it was like a year or two ago, it got re-released on the PC.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Okay.
So-
But yeah, no, it's great. We'll put a timestamp to like skip to this point if you don't want Journey spoilers because I don't know how much that spoils the actual gameplay of it because I think it's still really interesting because I knew that going in.
Yep.
But not everybody can like separate spoilers and stuff whenever they're thinking
Right.
about it. We should probably wrap up 2012. There's one big thing that I want to talk about, and there are a couple of other games that we're going to mention real quick.
Yeah.
So FTL, Faster Than Light.
I know that was a big one in terms of like a lot of people were talking about it. I don't know if it was a big streaming or video kind of stuff. I just know that
Yeah.
a lot of people were saying like they spent stupid amounts of hours playing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Another big one is Spelunky HD. Just wanted to shout that out again. The creator of it, what is it? Dan something. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name. But basically, it was a re-release, an HD re-release onto Xbox Live Arcade of a highly beloved freeware game. So if you want to play the original Spelunky, it's available for free online. But it's still going strong, still going huge today. It's one of the original like indie roguelites that really popularized that particular genre.
Yeah.
And same with FTL, just the
Mhm.
roguelite. You die, you lose everything, you do a rerun starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Sorry.
yeah, we'll skip through. Dear Esther is also on there at the start of the walking simulator.
Yep.
And I misrecalled 2012 was the League of Legends Season 2 championship.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yep.
I want to talk about The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
So
Such a great show.
it was at the time.
First
I'll-
episode,
I'll-
first season. I mean,
Season 1 was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then Frank Darabont got fired, and all sorts of nonsense happened, and that's neither here nor there.
So we're not talking about the show.
Right, we're talking about the Telltale game. So it was
Ah.
the first game that put Telltale on the map. They'd done a couple before then. They'd done like the Back to the Future games,
Mhm.
Mhm.
which were really interesting. But they're sort of like we mentioned QuickTime simulators, but they're very like dialogue heavy, story driven games
Right.
that you really only press like 2 or 1 of 4 buttons. But it's they're really interesting, and your decisions have effects across the like episodes that were released.
You can make an argument this is sort of the synthesis and the successful implementation of what Quantum Dream was doing previously from
Yeah.
Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
Right? Like Heavy Rain was big, blockbusters, expensive, not a lot of people got it. But then you look at Walking Dead and it's something that's small, it's an app, not a lot, it's like $5 or something at the time.
Yeah.
And they're developed episodically, so it was not a huge investment for the studio.
Right.
So like they could experiment and be artsy about this kind of stuff and take
Yeah.
risks.
And it was its own thing. So it wasn't the plot of the show. It was its
Right.
own little story in the universe, and
Yep.
the characterization of it is really cool, and it's great, and it really put Telltale on the map for the 2010s. And we'll talk about The Walking Dead again later.
Yeah.
At the end because there's sort of a tragic end here, but
Mhm.
yeah, it was
As with everything
huge.
Walking Dead, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh.
That is true. So that brings us to 2013.
All right. So 2013.
Yeah.
We talked briefly moments ago about the kind of bringing back of old classic games. I'm going to jump into some SimCity real quick.
Yeah.
Because previous to 2013, the last SimCity 4 came out like probably 10 years before that.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly. I think it was like 2001, 2002 probably. Maybe even 2000. No, it had to be after 2000 because there was SimCity 2000.
Yeah.
But suddenly you had this like reboot of a game that people hadn't heard about or even thought about in forever.
Yeah.
Man, I played the crap out of that. Again,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was an Origin release, so this was kind of, and it released on both sides, on
Mhm.
Mac and PC. So there was a lot of that like cross-platforming of games. That was exciting. 2013 was also kind of the release of, the release of GTA 5,
Mhm.
Grand Theft Auto, which is still going strong today, 7 years later with the online community.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and then I don't know. Later on in 2013, which we'll kind of get to, was like the PS4, Xbox One release.
Yeah.
Which brought a lot with it. There was Disney Infinity. I don't know if you guys ever experienced that or saw it or heard anything about it.
Was that their like amiibo kind of deal?
Yeah, it was the precursor to the Amiibo, really.
Yeah.
Because I think that came out with later on.
Skylanders was another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Skylanders was another thing, and there was a Lego Infinity at some point.
Yeah. So this was like, this was Star Wars. They had, I think 2.0 was Marvel Heroes, 3.0 was something else. But Disney Infinity was kind of this. You buy into a little figurine that suddenly you can play with. It becomes your character, which it was cool, and it's great for kids to be able to go from the screen, take your little figurine, and
Right.
start playing with that.
Yeah, for sure. It was a very, very cool idea. And as far as like marketing stuff, it was genius.
Yeah.
Absolutely genius. Yeah. So do you want to keep going? Because there are a couple of other games that we can just talk about here very quickly.
Yeah. Go for it.
So BioShock Infinite, the critically acclaimed sequel to the original BioShock. I'm not glossing over BioShock 2. BioShock 2 was done by a different studio.
Yeah.
But BioShock Infinite was really the next and at the moment last
I think so. Yeah.
instance into the entry into the BioShock universe. And,
Yeah.
it was very cool. It introduced the most useful AI companion of all time. And I wish I was joking, but Elizabeth is like one of the most clever
Right.
and resourceful. It is Elizabeth, right? I think
Yes,
so.
Elizabeth. What's
AIs
interesting is
in
just
the-
that
in the game.
because she just can't die, she can't get hurt. You don't have to escort her in any way.
Yeah, she can take care of herself.
She can take care of herself, so it just helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also Pokemon XY. So let's see. Dota 2 came out that year, officially released that year.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about like there being a championship in 2011,
But they were all just going from their betas. Right?
Yeah.
Just like how Gmail was in beta for the longest time.
yeah, for real.
Oh man.
And then Warframe was another one of those sort of like MMO things.
That old, huh?
I know, right? But it's really interesting because it has itself evolved into the new style of it's a perpetual game that you can play instead of it being an MMO.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. A couple of indie games. Papers, Please.
Papers, Please was a big breakout in terms of, you were saying how like games could be different and be for everybody, right? Indie games, what I really loved about them is they're always exploring. So it's not always, it's not always going to be the action games and the platformers. There's around this period, people really started exploring other themes. And Papers, Please was really interesting is that it made paperwork interesting.
It made paperwork empathetic. Right?
Empathetic, yes. So in case if you don't know, Papers, Please, you're the story of a border control guard on this effectively like Eastern European Cold War era like country.
Yeah.
Super authoritarian, and your job was to either approve or deny people trying to get across the border. And so throughout the whole entire time, you're checking whether or not their visas are properly haven't expired, their passports are genuine. Later on, like the government starts throwing more and more like requirements at them, like they have to have certain paperwork.
Yeah.
And then you can either detain or not. And you hear stories about a man who's like trying to get his wife across, but she doesn't have the right papers. So like, what do you do? Things in there, and the entire time you're trying to make ends meet too, and keeping your family alive because you might not make enough money to, for example, keep the lights on or keep the heat on, in which case your child might get sick.
Right.
And then there's a guard who approaches you like, hey, if you detain these folk, if every person you detain, I'll kick you back like $10 or something, right? And they're like, oh, it's like, am I going to become corrupt? Like, it's all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single one of your decisions has a long lasting impact, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
That's another games as experience thing, right?
Yeah.
That I really enjoy.
Yep.
So you had a couple that you put on this list.
Yeah, so I have Rogue Legacy on there. Rogue Legacy is just more in the line of roguelites. So they're starting to really explode at this period. Another one that just a lot of people were playing. I put Guacamelee up there. I am a big Metroidvania fan. Guacamelee is easily one of the most polished and well done like indie Metroidvanias that were coming out at the time.
Mhm.
I literally played that in 100% of that game in a single 12-hour weekend sitting.
Oh man.
It was crazy. I love it. Stanley Parable is
Yeah.
Speaking of games of their experiences.
yeah, Stanley Parable, one of the funniest games and really meta ones that came out at the time. It's
The game that plays you.
yeah, effectively.
Basically, yeah. It's a really really great game where it's all of, like you get to make a bunch of choices, but
Yeah.
there's an omniscient narrator that's
right.
not happy with some of the choices that you.
So when we discussed Bastion beforehand, where the
Yeah.
narrator narrated your actions,
Yeah.
now you narrate the narrator.
You action the narrator.
Yeah.
Action the narrator.
You
Perfect.
actively like just like make it matter, or well,
He tells you go through the left door.
Yeah,
and-
you go through the right door, and he's like, no, wait, no, go back. And that's a fun little couple-hour experience,
Yeah.
and it's a great little game. Andy,
Yes.
I know you would kill us if we just like
Please.
left 2013
Left
without
this
talking
game
about
for
it.
dead.
Yeah.
You're the Last of Us.
Oh yeah, I am. Oh gosh. So let's explore probably either my favorite or second favorite game of the 2010s. Sorry, of all time.
Yeah.
Last of Us. It's okay. So I talked briefly about like open world games being fun. This is not open world. This is completely linear. But I think what drew me in the most and draws me into most games that I play are an experience that this could potentially happen. This could be the post-apocalyptic world that we live in. Obviously, zombies are a little bit extreme, but the fact that this game takes place in Denver, Colorado, which immediately brings you back to Stephen King.
Yeah, The Stand, like
Yeah. So like, it's just oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm fanboying over this game.
Andy
just
has a lot to
sitting
say
here.
about this one.
Yeah, no, it's just so much
It's
fun.
so
You
much-
get so connected to the characters. Ellie and Joel just become like
It's also got
It's-
one of the most emotional opening sequences.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just like it's a real
oh my
gut punch.
gosh. Yeah, it's like I think what turned me onto this game so much was the first time I played it, we were living at the other house, and it was like, oh no, I guess I had played it beforehand, but I had always
Yeah, a
played
bit,
it
yeah.
in the dark,
Yeah.
just because I was like, I want to get fully immersed in this game, and you do get fully immersed. Like the emotions bring you in from the first scene. Suddenly, it's like, I think it was because it came out after my brother had his first daughter, and like suddenly, dad and daughter, and you get emotionally connected to that relationship. Like suddenly, Ellie and her dad are a huge part of the story. And not to spoil anything, but like things change really fast.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like all of a sudden there's just this apocalypse like zombie apocalypse that happens, and you're set up on this adventure to like save the world. And just the
Well, and the twist at the very end too.
yeah,
Right.
That's the.
Right.
I'm not gonna
twist.
spoil that.
Yeah, I cannot wait for Last of Us 2. I'm so excited.
Mhm.
But yeah, just I think the theme of the game of connecting you to the characters, making you feel
Right.
empathetic for everything that they're going through, every choice that you have to make, every like, do I shoot this guy or not? Or I think like there are options of shooting
Yeah.
a person or stealthing by them, just to like because they're trying to live, you're trying to live. It's just so good.
Made it a little more visceral compared to other stealth games. When you look at like Metal Gear Solid, where it's more for the ranking kind of
Yeah.
deal, right? In this particular case, there's a bit more of the empathy aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the last thing I would add too is just the soundtrack,
Sounds
like
real good.
the menu music, like with the looking out the window, with the dust flying through. Like playing this on PS3 was an experience. Playing it on PS4, just the graphics were a little bit better, and like I would love to go back and see it in 4K and everything like that.
I mean, it's
'cause-
Naughty Dog, right?
Yeah, it is.
So,
Naughty Dog.
so just thinking about all the things they learned doing like the the Uncharted series,
Yep.
and put that into something with some emotional weight to it
yeah,
is impressive.
some emotional weight, all the emotional weight,
For real.
but like the opposite emotional weight,
Yeah.
Candy Crush.
Yeah, Candy Crush came out that year.
Oh my gosh.
Is to sort of took the mobile world by storm, right? And like just like non gamers, right? Like it, it was one of the biggest things to like breach that gap, right?
Yeah,
Or bridge that gap.
I was
sorry.
gonna say, like, when a game like shows up in popular culture, like on TV, even if it's being oh gosh, what's the word? Parodied. Like whatever Captain Holt and Gina are playing in 9-9.
Yeah,
They're playing it's Candy Crush, but
it's Candy.
it's like, it's bridging the gap between gamers and like this is real world where
Right.
people are at work playing these phone games
Yeah.
because
It's become a
just to
thing where
pass the time.
the people say like everybody's a gamer.
Yeah, everybody.
Everybody is. Like it's not just us for like the hardcore stuff where we play the things that are released by these big studios. When you start thinking about just mobile games, your Temple Runs, your Candy
Right.
Crushes, your Plants vs Zombies, and your what is
Angry
it?
Birds.
Angry Birds.
Angry Birds, Flappy Birds, and
Yeah. Yep.
all that good stuff. Your Jetpack Joyride, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Where you have a jetpack that is actually just a Gatling gun.
Oh man, I
And-
remember that.
Yeah. And it's just like this insane jazz soundtrack that goes
Yeah.
as you play, and it's really interesting that's sort of like the biggest breakout year for that.
Right.
Yep.
And then so Lou, what happened in the world of esports?
Yeah, the League of Legends Championship Series is established. So this is the first major league system where the developer funding and actively investing in their esports organization. So they are now officially becoming like a sport. They have a league now where players are given a salary, where they have some kind of form of financial stability, where they're not playing just for tournament winnings, where there is a season of stuff or regularly scheduled games. Like I remember at this period, like every weekend, you got the European Championship Series on like Thursdays and Fridays, and then Saturday and Sundays, North America plays, and you have established teams, established personalities who are some kind of consistency when it comes to roster, and just being able to see that, like, it's a big step. If we think about like where we are today, like that just really started it when it comes to legitimizing esports.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So that sort of takes us to 2014, which we're going to move through these quicker and quicker and quicker, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hearthstone, big deal.
Yeah, that moved from beta to public in 2014, right?
Yeah. We played a lot of that when it came out. So it was the World of Warcraft card game, basically. And
Yeah, Heroes of World of Warcraft, or Heroes of Warcraft, or whatever was the tagline originally.
yeah,
That's what it was called. Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yep.
And so it was a really interesting, flashy card game that you could play mobile.
Yep.
Right. And
Did it immediately release mobile?
I think when it officially released is
It had-
yes,
yeah.
it came out like on iPad first and then
Okay.
iPhone later or something like that.
Yeah. And so it was a big deal. It still is.
Yeah.
There's a non-zero amount of tournaments going on all the time, and a lot of money in it.
Grand
and,
champions, whatever.
Yeah, and political statements being made, and that's another conversation. So speaking of like sort of like esportsy stuff, Smite was another MOBA
Yeah.
that came out, and that was made
Locally.
Yeah,
Yep.
out of Alpharetta, Georgia, I think.
I'm pretty sure I saw a developer at Chick-fil-A during this a couple of years back.
Oh yeah,
That was the thing.
yeah, for sure. And like they
Oh.
like they frequented Battle and Brew.
Yeah.
At their old
I was
location.
gonna say because they always had it streaming on the TVs. It was like
Yeah.
Smite or League.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And so that was a thing. I haven't checked into like the scene recently. I don't know if it's still really going on. Dragon Age Inquisition,
Which I bought and played a couple times.
and Clay played all of the
Multiple
hours.
times.
Clay's put like 700 hours into this game.
Oh man.
Clay, you has not
Haven't
been
met
on. Yeah. Now that I realize that he hasn't been on Casual Nerds, but if you ever check us out at C&C Power Hour,
CNCPowerHour.com.
yeah, Clay from the C&C Power Hour has put in a lot of work into Dragon Age, because it's like it's a really interesting, like it's kind of chill, but it's an action fantasy game, and it's another BioWare game, so more Mass Effect, and or it's in the line of Mass Effect, where it's about a bunch of dialogue stuff, and your actions have serious consequences, almost irreversible consequences over the course of the game, and it's very cool. Into the indie game scene real quick, we have Shovel Knight.
First big one is Shovel Knight. So this is when Shovel Knight was first released. Shovel Knight was and probably still is one of the most successful Kickstarter games of all time.
For sure.
Yacht Club Games seriously have done a great job keeping up with their commitments that they laid out in terms of their stretch goals because they got massively funded. Shovel Knight, if you don't know, is sort of like an 8-bit style old school platformer, feels in the style like old school Castlevania-ish kind of deal. It is a fantastic game with wonderful amounts of charm, um, really well polished. And even up till now, like recently, they just released like the last DLC. So they've been working on this for like 6 years now, constantly being supported, developing a massive community. They've done really well in terms of supporting cross-platform stuff. When they got ported to other consoles, they had guest characters. So they had like Kratos was one of the guest characters in there, one of the Battletoads. Uh, and then they even have a trophy in Smash Brothers Ultimate. Like these guys are big. They're everywhere. They are one of the breakout successes of the indie scene. So like building upon the old previous stuff that we have from like the Braids and the Bastions and from the Cave Story, right? But Shovel Knight is probably the most well-known indie character that has really made popular success because of how well Yacht Club Games has supported and kept their promises and built up the community goodwill. A couple of other ones to talk about: Goat Simulator. So in terms of like great things that took people by storm, the silliness that is Goat Simulator.
Yeah.
Right.
I still can't get over it. Like I heard about it recently. Just like was it on sale or something? That was like it was a free weekend.
And there's so many different versions of it. Yeah, they just got them going on. Like the whole idea was like if it's a bug and as long as it doesn't break the game, we'll keep it in there and it'll get to do silly stuff. Like you thought Goose Game was
we haven't talked about Honk yet.
Yeah. Like this is the original. You're a jerk goat.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Transistor, the next release from the people who made Bastion from Supergiant.
Yep.
When Andy was talking about The Last of Us, if you want something interesting like that, I recommend This War of Mine.
Okay.
Also highly talked about. It is effectively you, again, trying to do like a political message and getting you to think in the indie game space. You are a survivor, and probably very relevant now. You are a survivor in a war-torn country. And you are basically there trying to survive. You need to go out there and hunt in the, on the battlefield for, like in the ruins of stuff for like food, for medicine, and all that other stuff. And you can, at certain times, you like people or like other scavengers are there too, and whether or not you kill them or not, or you break into a place, and all of a sudden you realize like a defenseless old lady, but she has a lot of stuff in there. Like, what do you do? And things like that. So very interested if you want to check that out. Relevant, especially if you look at a political climate today in other places in the Middle East and stuff where it's still relevant. And war never changes.
Yeah.
Real quick thing, just because I want to shout out, just because of how like neat it was, is a game called Never Alone. It is a simple little platformer game set in like the Alaska wilderness. They had a local, I think it's a Canupiaq. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm going to butcher it, but they actually partnered with that local tribe to tell a story of their traditional folklore. So that game is heavily steeped in their folklore. Like everything about it is tied to their traditional tales and their traditional culture, the artwork, the music, the story that it goes through, and they even have like individual videos in their extra content stuff, which is literally just like almost like a mini documentary talking about it. So like I just wanted to shout that out in terms of when I was looking through like games that were released and like highly acclaimed games. Like that was really cool. The space where indies can play, where they really like honor and respect all other perspectives and histories and cultures the way they came from, and the ability for gaming to give people that context as well.
That's cool.
Yep. Octodad in the same line as Goat Simulator in terms of just silly fun games. Where was I forgot to ask, where was like Surgeon Simulator in all of this?
Surgeon Simulator?
Oh.
You mean Operation?
No.
No.
It's kicking off in that. So Octodad is in that same vein with Surgeon Simulator in the game where you're comedically hard to control.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is that like you're trying to control this hand, but it's just like you have barely in control of individual fingers, and it barely controls what you do, and you're just the worst possible doctor ever.
Oh, great.
And your whole point is to just try to do this operation, and like they'll survive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Operation.
It is so good. But it is in that line of stuff is just like stuff that's eminently watchable. Like literally, I was like, I was playing that game, and I was like on a Skype call with my friends. And my parents were in the middle and just watched me play Surgeon Simulator, and they were like egging me on the entire time. My friends like could hear over the thing because we were just having a casual conversation, and I was playing, and my parents like, "Oh no, get that card! No, you missed! Oh no! Like, what are you gonna do?"
Yeah.
And it was like, it was one of the few times my parents got really into watching me playing a video game.
Funny.
Yeah.
I have great memories of that.
That's fair.
I have Ollie Ollie because I know apparently that was a big streaming game. I don't have too much context on it, but I know it gets brought up in conversations.
Yeah.
But the big one is Five Nights at Freddy's was released in 2014. Yeah, Markiplier, the game theorists, built themselves on the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. So this is continuing with the fact that horror games are eminently streamable and watchable for creating videos.
Yeah.
This was like the biggest thing for kids at the time too, because
Mm.
like they had my nephew, right,
Mm.
who's fairly young, or was very young at the time. He may have been like 6,
Yeah.
and like he just absolutely loved watching people play Five Nights at Freddy's.
Did he ever play himself? Or
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
Yeah, because I mean, like he didn't really have a tablet till a bit later.
Okay.
But, yeah, so it was huge. It was another one of those horror things where you could watch people react to them. And,
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. Brief pour one out for the Ouya, real quick. Which thank you for mentioning it. But
Ooh, yeah.
Towerfall Ascension was a kind of the system seller for it, right?
Right.
And, it was supposed to be like this console killer, basically, right?
Yeah, the third party. They try to bring another console in there. It's a little bit
Yeah.
more like mobile space kind of deal.
Yeah. You could play your mobile games on the big screen. And it was just like, why?
Oh, that's cool.
Real quick, so this is the year that there were multiple MMOs that came out and didn't really go too far anywhere.
No.
So I guess we'll start off with WildStar because RIP.
Yeah, that's rip.
That's the one. That's the only one on this list that is dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Legit dead. Elder Scrolls Online came out that year.
Yep.
Which I actually haven't played, but did a lot of stuff.
There was a free weekend on Steam a few weeks ago or a
Right.
few months ago.
Yeah.
And I tried, and
Didn't you say it was like 60 gig download? And like, by
Yeah.
the time you finished, like it was probably the
It was-
weekend was over?
yeah, exactly. Oh man, that was harsh.
Yeah.
That was rough.
Final Fantasy 14, which they rebooted and is still going strong.
Yeah,
Has-
that's an interesting story if people ever want to look into that. Where
Yeah.
it did so poorly when it first released
Mm.
that they were just like, nope, we're going to take it down and redo this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now there's like multiple expansions and stuff like that, and the music. I've listened to the music.
The music for Final Fantasy 14 is really
Fantastic.
good.
Okay.
I don't listen to.
I mean, I know Final Fantasy music. Final Fantasy music is good.
Yeah.
But I haven't had a chance to check out the 14 soundtrack in particular.
Please, you have to.
Yeah, you should.
Coming for me.
And that was the year that Destiny launched.
Oh yeah.
Destiny was Bungie's first non-Halo game.
After they split off, right?
Yeah, after they split off. At the time, they were self-publishing, so they were a small indie company. And I guess they are now that they're not owned by Activision Blizzard. But that's a running joke in the Destiny community that they're just a small indie company. You have to give them time to fix these things. But yeah, it was really interesting. So it was it didn't really have like quests in the sense of other MMOs. It had like story-based missions and then raids and dungeons that you could do with your friends. But it was pretty successful at the time.
Yeah.
And
Don't have it much in here, but Guild Wars 2, I forgot we've put in there.
Oh yeah.
right. Guild Wars 2 we didn't put in, which is still going on. We also didn't put in the Secret World. RIP.
A lot of these Chinese developed, like
Yeah.
these MMOs, we got to just mention just briefly. We don't have as much context when it comes to like these Korean and Chinese MMOs. Like Nexon, the stuff they publish, there's so much.
Yeah.
And if we ever want to
Was that
do it,
Vindictus? That was
oh
early
my goodness,
on.
I played Vindictus. Holy,
Yes,
I
me too.
forgot all about that. Oh my
Sorry, I didn't mean to trigger
goodness.
you. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I played that like that. That was like I think that was 2011 though. It
Yeah,
was pretty
Yeah.
early on.
but I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, that was.
That was great.
But
Great.
yeah, stuff like that, Blade and Soul,
Yep.
Black Desert.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just we don't have as much context around those.
The only other thing I wanted to point out about Destiny real quick was that was kind of an interesting concept of turning this like open world, but also you have like it's less open world than most games.
Right.
Yeah.
But
It's instance and all that jazz.
yeah,
but
it's instance open world, which is like fascinating to me because I don't know, it's good. It's a good mix of like MMO single player because you can do
Yeah.
most things in the game.
Through single player or through matchmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I just remember I really enjoyed it because it was just MMO Halo, right?
Yeah.
It was Halo
Yeah.
gunplay, and you just get to go ahead in an open world and just kill stuff in an MMO. It's like, all right, this is pretty good.
Yeah, and you can be a space wizard, which is awesome. Yeah. All right, we're halfway through.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I can't look at my watch right now because there's a dog on me. But I think we're probably a bit over time to hit the 60-minute mark, but it's okay. 2015. Do you want to go through these very quickly? A lot of these we don't really have a lot to say about. We've played up most of them,
Mhm.
I think, but there are a couple towards the end. So Andy, do you want to run through them real quick or?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start with Fallout 4, which is something that I played a lot of, and something again still getting played today, like Skyrim, and same studio. Just the mod community for that is huge. I remember our
Yeah.
roommate Gabe has I think he still plays it because it's there's so many things that you can do with that.
Yeah,
Even
for sure.
more so than Fallout 76. Rip, fail. Yeah.
No, we didn't put that on the list.
No, we didn't.
It doesn't deserve to be on the list.
The Witcher 3, I never played, but I heard a lot about.
A lot about.
And it was obviously critically acclaimed in that year. And I remember thinking about, I should buy that, but I never did. Ori and the Blind Forest.
Another big indie game that came out, Metroidvania. So again, this is the era of Metroidvanias. These couple of years, the Metroidvania genre got real big in terms of the indie space. Ori is definitely one of the other ones. I have on this list elsewhere Axiom Verge, which is also really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we can do if you want to.
No, yeah, it's good. Blizzard had another launch with Heroes of the Storm, which was kind of in that MOBA space.
Yeah, somehow still going, but
is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, people still play for prize money and stuff, and I don't know how.
Multiplayer online battle arena, right?
Yeah.
Yep. MOBAs.
Rocket League, which is like soccer with cars.
Yeah.
Which I never got into, but it's so huge.
Yeah, it's still going strong.
That's a huge streaming community. You want to talk about that real quick?
Right.
Man, I just see people all up on that.
Yep. Otherwise, the rest of that list is just a whole bunch of indie games, because at this period, indie games are really starting to explode and doing things that are super interesting. There are some old school stuff like N++. This was an old Flash game. It's a little ninja platformer kind of deal. I just put it on there because it's just pure nostalgia for me. Her Story definitely got a lot of acclaim in terms of narrative design, where you are basically just a detective trying to piece together the story by searching through all these old logs of videos and stuff. Hand of Fate is actually super interesting because this is one of the really interesting roguelites that you'll see doing stuff that's similar to what's going on later on. Hand of Fate, effectively, the premise is you're an adventurer and you're talking to a guy who's got the deck of tarot cards, and the tarot cards that he shuffles and plays are the levels and encounters that you go across as you go on your adventure. Axiom Verge, I mentioned, which is Metroidvania. Broken? I don't know who put that one in. Is that Broken Age?
It may have been Broken Age.
Broken Age. Oh, okay, yeah. So talking previously about how Kickstarter games were getting big. This is when Double Fine they saw the success of Shovel Knight and decided to publish and try to crowdfund their own next expansion and next games. And Tim Schafer was like, all right, let's do this. And Broken Age came out. They were probably funded a whole bunch real quickly. Shovel Knight was the biggest video game funded on Kickstarter for a brief bit until Broken Age blew it out of the water. Literally a couple of months later.
And then Psychonauts 2 is still the fastest funded game on Kickstarter, I think. Right. Which was pretty impressive. It's another Tim Schafer game, and that was maybe a year or two after that, but it's still not out. Getting ahead of ourselves, I guess. Yeah.
Crypt of the Necrodancer, Rhythm, Roguelite. Again, tying to recently the Cadence of Hyrule. Life is Strange. As we were talking previously about Undertale, Life is Strange is definitely another in that space of narrative-heavy, decision is important episodic games. Well, yeah, I guess Life is Strange was it episodic, or did it all release at once?
No, it was episodic. There were 3 episodes, I think.
Okay, and then they re-released as a whole package. And then Life is Strange 2 is coming out, I think, or just came out.
Just came out.
And of course, the big 800-pound gorilla in the indie space this year was Undertale.
Yeah. All right. So I have the Savadan conundrum. I need to pitch to you guys.
Okay. About it.
So you're walking through a forest.
Right.
Yep.
It's a special enchanted forest.
Okay.
You come across a man in a man-sized jar.
Yep.
Perfect.
What do? You let him out? You leave him in there? What's your course of action?
What does the man in the man-sized jar say?
Let's assume you can't hear the man in the man-sized jar. It's a soundproof jar.
I say leave him. He's clearly there for a reason. Like, somebody put him there. I don't want to be bothered with if it's some sort of
How far off the road, off the beaten path is he?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Can you go Can you go make this somebody else's problem?
Well, the question is that do I have to walk 20, 30 feet off the path in order to get to him? Which clearly implies that.
But I mean, he's in front of you. You're on the normal footpath, and he's right there.
Then I would definitely ignore that because that is obviously a trap.
Okay. All right. This is so
because whoever put that there had no no inclination to hide what they're doing.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're meant to pique your curiosity. At that point, I'm like, nope. Like this is setting hairs in the back of my neck, straight up.
And that's the entirety of Undertale. No,
Wait, what?
No, that's it's Hollow Knight is where that comes from.
Okay.
So if you've never played Hollow Knight, which was the same year,
Do we? Wait, I don't see Hollow Knight on that.
yeah, because I
Not.
didn't put it on the list.
Okay. I thought-
Unless I moved it and I accidentally put that in the wrong place.
yeah.
Fine.
Because I was gonna say because Hollow Knight. Yeah, no, there it is.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry.
So
Hollow Knight was
it's
2017.
17,
My
yeah.
bad. Yeah, so I accidentally put the 7 in Conundrum in Undertale, but it's actually in Hollow Knight.
Okay.
That's where it comes from. Is it's one of the things in Hollow Knight. That you come across.
Now, okay. Now that you mentioned the Hollow Knight thing, okay, yeah.
So Undertale we didn't really actually talk about, but
It is highly influential.
yeah, highly influential, super narrative heavy.
Right.
Very much your decisions have literally irreversible consequences.
Huh.
I think.
It is also extremely meta. It's hard to describe. So I think the biggest thing, if you haven't heard of Undertale otherwise, it is a game in which you can go through without killing anybody.
If you want.
If you want to. And the whole point is that it's got a real quirky charm to it. It's Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale, was heavily influenced by the Earthbound series back in the NES and Super Nintendo. Earthbound was the only game that was released in the US, but there was originally Mother 1 and Mother 3 that were that were released in Japan. Earthbound 2, I believe. Mother 2 was what was released as Earthbound in the US. And this very quirky, sort of like very emotionally touchy-feely kind of deal, but like definitely not your average expectation when it comes to like combat heavy fantasy power fantasy level like RPG. It's about like a little psychic kid like going off to save the world. But yes, he was very much inspired by the Earthbound series. He started off making mods for it too until he decided to create his own game in that vein, and that's Undertale. And it is delightfully quirky, cast of really interesting characters, and it is memey as beyond all hell. Like it has taken on a life of its own.
I think hell's okay.
Okay.
It has taken on a life of its own in terms of just how much it resonates with people, partially because of just how like emotional the story can be.
Yeah.
But also just how like lovable and memorable the characters are, and just people just love Undertale.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of does it. Oh no, there's one big thing in
Do you want to talk about that last one first?
2015. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
So console wise, the last Metal Gear Solid game came out.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain.
right.
It may not be the last. I don't really care if it isn't, because Hideo Kojima, the creator of the
No
Metal
longer
Gear
needs to
Solid-
work on Metal Gear.
Yeah, no longer is forced to work on Metal Gear.
Yep.
He left Konami after a whole slew of problems, and
Yeah.
this is just a tiny starting point into a conversation about how poorly AAA companies treat their employees.
Right.
Even huge names like Kojima,
Yep.
who has just, and I mean, we'll talk about it later with what he released last year. Like
Right.
he is a force of his own, but he was still treated extremely poorly. And,
Yeah, when you talk about like auteur theory, like Kojima is heavy auteur, up there with like Suda51 and like Hideki Kamiya and all those other folks. I just put it on there because this was my obsession during that period. At this point, I probably stopped playing League. I adored Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker on the PSP back in the day, and Metal Gear Solid 5 was exactly what I needed. It was open world Peace Walker, where I could basically hunt soldiers like Pokemon and recruit them into my team.
Yep.
Nice.
It was great. I loved this game.
Yeah.
So like,
And then one thing that I kind of skipped over, but
it's fine.
keep talking, nobody explodes.
Yeah, this is like the precursor to 2016 and the future of gaming. What's coming in 2020 and beyond. Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes is, I think, first release is just a normal
game.
normal game.
But you could view it in VR and all that.
Quickly made its way to VR, which brings us to 2016 when you had things like the Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive, stuff that's like still selling. And I think 2020, and I've read articles on this, where 2020 is going to be the year where VR either goes or lives or dies.
So yeah, so I think it's like the first, what is it, like mass market? I wouldn't even call it mass market. No, it's still enthusiast.
Yeah,
but like for private use, like off the shelf VR.
Was 2016. Yeah.
Dedicated systems, because like you've got things that you can put your phone in, like the Samsung VR or whatever it's called.
The Galaxy View.
Yeah, I think so.
Like that.
Google Glass.
Yeah.
No, Google Glass is different.
Not Google
Those are
Glass.
the
What's
glasses.
the one where the
Yeah, you
card
build a
Google
cardboard box.
Is
Yeah.
it Google Cardboard?
Yeah.
Google Cardboard. That's right. So that all kind of launched for consumers really in 2016, where these things are finally accessible, things that you can, um, finally take it home and play VR.
Yeah.
So like you had Super Hot VR, which is still hot selling, and
Yeah.
it's like that's one of those.
Such a fun
Which
game
I
to
actually
watch.
love.
Yeah, I know.
I love Super Hot because I remember playing that original demo, which was
Yep.
like a flash demo back in the day, where it was
Oh,
coming out of an indie game jam or something.
Yep.
And like it was a weird art house kind of thing, and then like they got released to a full game. Like, woof.
Right.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Also reality-based that
Yeah.
year, Pokemon Go.
The AR from the VR.
Yeah.
Augmented reality, Pokemon Go. That was a huge release in like June, July of
Yeah.
2016. I remember going to the local like city square, and this is like
Yep.
10 o'clock at night, and there are
Oh yeah.
hundreds of people walking around collecting Pokemon because, like, I think from the beginning it was where there are more people gathered. There's like nests of
Yeah.
Pokemon that just kind of like spawn.
My old
and-
boss, he's like, my friends and I, it's like basically went and did a hike to Kennesaw Mountain because Bulbasaur was spawning there. And he was
Yeah.
just like, I would not be doing this. I am not an exercise person.
Yeah.
And yet they did. There are stories about like cafes who have a Pokestop on them. And it's like literally, I can make tons of people come just by putting on like a scent tracker thing that spawns Pokemon at the stop, and people would just come and show up. And like, cafes and stuff like doubled and tripled their revenue.
Well, like, yeah, in September or October of 2016, you had Starbucks partnering with Pokemon Go.
Mhm.
There was the Pokemon Go Frappuccino, and suddenly all Starbucks are either a stop or a gym.
Yeah.
Right.
And like, oh, it's totally a business model.
Yeah, that was a
totally
that was a huge
exploitable.
Yep. Yep.
But something like taking that, but as kind of a throwback to gaming, in that year, in 2016, they launched the NES Classic.
Right.
Which I think was fantastic.
Weaponizing nostalgia.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Oh man.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It's launched a habit of creating classic consoles that
Yep.
may or may not run as well as they're supposed to.
I mean, the crazy
Looking
thing
at
is
you,
that
the
like
PS1
it is
classic.
getting to the era where like my nostalgia is being what's popular right now. So
Right.
like to me, it's just like I am being catered to, and it's
Well, they also
It's a great feeling, but it's not
Yeah,
necessarily the best.
That's
Yeah.
true. I mean, they capitalize on modders, like physical material modders, who are doing that with old systems, putting in a hard drive and stuff like that, putting in emulators in like the box of a SNES
Yep.
or
Right.
an NES. Capitalize on the weaponizing nostalgia. That's a good way to put it. Of like, let's just make this real, and you'll buy
Yep.
it, and people did.
Yep.
It sold out immediately.
It was basically all the stuff that they needed to do was already crowdsourced, and
Yep.
including the emulation engine, which is kind of controversial because they use they stripped actual code from
an open
NES
source.
emulators
Yeah.
and put it into the NES Classic and then sold it, which is not what you're supposed to do with open source software. I'm not mad.
At least not with the right licensing.
Yeah, that's true. A couple of other things that came out that year: Doom.
Yep.
Doom
2016.
Doom
2016.
Talk about classic.
Yeah.
Reviving old stuff and like bringing what's old is new again.
Yeah, but they really, instead of just like re-releasing it, they really bumped it up.
Yeah.
Turned it into like a graphics simulator, or what do you call it? Like a benchmark software.
Yeah, it's the new Crisis, right?
Yeah.
Firewatch.
Yeah, so the Firewatch, and a whole bunch of in the indie game space, a lot of the Kickstarter stuff is also coming to bear throughout this entire time.
Mhm.
So I can't remember what Firewatch was, but I think Owlboy in there, Darkest Dungeon, Hyper Light Drifter, Fury, all Kickstarter games that released at this time, and definitely just showing off just how much appetite there was for new, fresh experiences or stuff that's going for like a nostalgic feel. So when you talk about like, Owlboy,
Mhm.
which is like literally like extremely high fidelity pixel graphics. Like if
Yeah.
you ever look at Owlboy, that game is pretty. It is gorgeous. It is all pixel art, so it's just like again weaponizing nostalgia.
Mhm.
The Witness was also released. Jonathan Blow, so he released Braid originally. So one of the early pioneers of the indie game genre. This guy is a fascinating person. If you ever look at any of his interviews, he's got a little bit. He seems a little bit like conceited and all that other stuff. But when you look at the stuff that he builds, like when he puts his money where his mouth is, and the stuff that he designs are always very thought provoking, extremely clever. Again, Darkest Dungeon, taking the Dark Souls-esque crushing difficulty
Yeah.
of stuff and Eldritch horror and bringing that into like a roguelite environment. Hyper Light Drifter and Fury, they're just very much action heavy. Like Hyper Light Drifter has other things about it. It's very pretty, very sparse, drawing the narrative inspiration from Dark Souls and being like no text, no real text, no real narration. All this stuff you derive entirely from context and basically a sense of mystery of a decaying world. Fury is just boss rush. Devil Daggers, I pointed out there was an interesting thing that was really popular for about a couple of months, where it was very much reminiscent of like 90s shooters. Like when you think about how Doom became really big, Devil Daggers was a old school, like just high score attack kind of deal.
Yeah.
Overcooked, super fun. There's a lot of stuff going on around here where there's like couch co-op is big, right? When Halo came out, I think it was like Halo 4 came out, they were like, oh, there's no more couch co-op on the Halo games, and we're like, because everybody plays online now, and everybody was like, no, Halo was all about the multiplayer, like playing with your buddies on the same couch, and Overcooked was one of the big flag bearers in my mind in terms of revitalizing the whole like, hey, let's play with your buddies, and you get to punch them if you're doing poorly, or whatever, like, just yelling at each other. I mean, you combine that with Keep Talking Nobody Explodes, right, where it's just there's a space in here where around the same time we're talking about again in the outside of space of this video games is board gaming. Is coming up of this period where you get that sense where community is important now. We spend too much time, yelling at each other over Xbox Live, being ganked and being teabagged by 13-year-old kids with on their parents, playing with their parents' credit cards. They're trying to draw every stereotype I could think of at the moment. But where there's a longing to reconnect, a simpler time with friends, having that more personal connection between things, where we talk about like those emotional narrative-driven games, or ones that harken back to the old times, like our Metroidvanias, like our 2D platformers, like the heavy pixel art graphics of stuff, and couch co-op.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, like something that we kind of skipped over at the very beginning, 2011, I think, was Little Big Planet 2. Which, if you ever played Little Big Planet,
a little bit of that.
And
it is the couch co-op game of the century.
Yeah.
It will also end relationships.
I'm so sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
Speaking from personal experience there?
No, it's just like it's a game that, like, if you're playing with somebody that wants to make your life difficult or is like means well and can't really play games very well, it is one of the most frustrating experiences of your life.
But at the same time,
it's a lot of fun.
It doesn't necessarily punish you. It's not like you're playing Mario and you die and you have to start back from the very beginning. Like,
well, you compare to what Nintendo's been doing a lot in terms of their multiplayer stuff, right? Starting from like Mario Galaxy, where you have your buddy like shoot your little star bits, or I have a great story about like Rayman Origins on the Wii U at a GameStop, where that was the one where if you had the tablet on the gamepad, you could like draw platforms and like move obstacles away from the player. And I remember having this great experience with this other random dude who like wanted to play. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, wait, you take the controller, let me grab the tablet. And I was doing that stuff, and the guy, and at the end, I was showing his girlfriend, and I was like, dude, check this out. Like, look at, I'm just like, what you didn't realize what I was doing is the entire time, the little fairy going around helping you drawing platforms and moving stuff. That was me, and I was helping you out. And he's like, oh, that was so cool. Yeah. And I bet I made that guy's day. Like the smile on his face, I will never forget.
Yeah, because there were many times I played with my mom on Little Big Planet, or like, my niece and nephew.
Yeah,
like. I don't know. It's fun.
It's a very fun game. I like you can, if you ever watch the C&C Power Hour, and I'm streaming video games or Lou's streaming video games. There's a Sackboy in the background, which is adorable, and it was such a fun game. It was huge at the time.
Oh
when
it launched.
Yeah, when it launched, it was a big freaking deal.
I was playing Overcooked with my niece and nephew, nieces and nephews. Like, a couple weeks ago for Christmas, because they got a Switch for Christmas. So like, Overcooked 2.
Yeah, Overcooked 2. Let's see, what else is on this list? So you put Human Fall Flat.
Human Fall Flat is just a similar thing with like just silly, great couch co-op games. Well, no, that one isn't it. I guess Gang Beasts is probably, but it's in the same vein of like silly, fun games where like you've derived humor in indie games.
Yeah. I'll let you talk about Mighty Number 9.
Yeah. So as much as the success of all those Kickstarter games, like I mentioned previously, Mighty Number 9 is the big black mark amongst it all. The story behind that is much too long for this conversation, but Stop Skeletons from Fighting is a great channel on YouTube, and they have a great post-mortem of what went wrong in Mighty Number 9. So that is great. I'll throw it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. I really want to talk about Stardew Valley for just a minute. It's really interesting because it's one dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this little farming video game by one guy, and it's going so strong. Like
Right.
there's a
Still.
huge Twitch community around it with like competitive play somehow. It's so cool.
I think the really interesting thing here is that it is basically, again, reemphasizing the fact that indie developers are finding gaps in the market of saying, hey, what is missing? What are these old games that we haven't seen in a long time? I mean, Stardew Valley is basically Harvest Moon,
Yeah.
right? You have all the Metroidvanias because there haven't been a good Castlevania release in quite some time, and that's why all the Metroidvanias, where the Hollow Knights, where the Guacameles came out and filled that gap. Recently, just to jump ahead a little bit, like Wargroove came out as to fill in that gap because Fire Emblem is so popular, but I'm missing out on like the old Advance Wars tactics games,
Mhm.
right? And that's where Wargroove came in. Like indie games are great, where these developers, these passionate developers who are passionate for the genre or whatever style of game that they feel they're missing out on, are able to come in and fill that space with great, fresh, innovative ideas and be able to release that for cheap for gamers. Like this time is just really, really awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then Andy, you want to talk about the big thing in 2016 that we just haven't mentioned yet?
Man, I don't even know if I was playing video games in 2016.
Except for
except for Overwatch.
yeah.
Oh man, that was a release. We
Ugh.
played a lot of that. We brought the TV into the other room
Yeah.
so that we could play together with Clay, who you guys haven't met. Clay from the C&C Power Hour.
Yep.
Yeah.
His brother. We had friends from work, friends
Yeah.
from not work, friends just. That was a game.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Early Overwatch was fun.
Mhm.
We dropped out of it after a couple months. Just
Yeah, part
life.
of it was the competitive season and
Yeah.
life, and
your
I
Overwatch thumb.
physically injured myself playing too much Overwatch.
Oh man.
I think I actually do have like a sore finger from
Yeah.
playing Destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My click finger, my index
Yeah.
finger.
But yeah, no, it was great. It was a huge deal.
Yeah, it was a huge deal for Blizzard.
Yeah.
That was something that they had been kind of. Was that Project Titan?
Yes,
it
it
was Project Titan. It was like they scrapped Titan and sort of like pulled bits and pieces from it and
Right.
turned it into Overwatch. And Project Titan was like their big thing for years.
Yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know, kind of like they were talking about it of being like, you know, the next World of Warcraft, and
Mm-hmm.
it was supposed to be this huge successful thing, and they scrapped it.
Yep.
And then it turned into Overwatch, and
just as successful.
I
Yeah.
watched the cinematic trailer for that because it was like the museum fight
Yeah.
so many times.
Yeah.
And the music is really good.
Yep.
And like the characterization and the theories behind how the characters how the characters work. It's one of my favorite things that they pulled over from World of Warcraft was the silhouette theory
Yeah.
of like you should be able to recognize somebody
Oh.
from far away.
Yeah, no, that's the whole thing about character design, but also if you want to talk about game design, their audio design.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
made it so that you can tell everything from the audio, from the fact that each character has a specific call out for their ultimates.
Yep.
Depending on whether you're the enemy or the allied team. The fact that they prioritize the sound of the footsteps are heavier for characters that are more dangerous.
Every footstep's unique.
Every footstep's unique as
Yeah.
well. Just there's so many. So I could recommend a lot of different things. So Extra Frames has a great breakdown of the animation involved, how it conveys personality. There's a great GDC talks on designing the audio behind that, which are a lot of what I'm talking about right now is going on with. I mean, there's so much to learn. Overwatch is a great case study if you ever want to study game design.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And that's
for
the
sure.
thing, like the whole thing about me and indie games, like just as a little bit of history, was like starting from 2010 was where I seriously got into game design. I was playing a whole crap ton of League.
Mhm.
It was around this time that I got back into Magic, so I started reading Mark Rosewater's articles
Mhm.
again.
Yeah.
And so like people like discussing about champion balance on League of Legends, watching how cards were designed in Magic. From then on, and me getting into indie games and seeing how they were doing new stuff, like from there, that's the time where I started becoming a serious like student aficionado of game design and trying to understand why I like the things I like.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
And so when I start talking about like my journey is so fascinating because at the time I was deep into looking at like Joseph Campbell and the Hero of a Thousand Faces and the hero's journey and like understanding all the through lines behind like what our culture values and what our stories shape how we think, what we value, and what we think is important
Mhm.
and all that jazz. And just seeing like these video games, why do these certain video games stay with us? Why does The Last of Us stay with us so long? And like,
Yeah.
why are zombie narratives so popular when it comes to post-apocalyptic stuff? Like, how it reflects the worries and anxieties of our time.
Yeah.
So I can go on and on about that, but yeah.
Totally.
Was PUBG 2016?
If it
Has to
was,
be.
it was the pre.
Yeah, because it and Fortnite came out in the same year, right?
I feel like it's been a while, a little
think-
bit longer before Fortnite.
Did I not have
I
PUBG
think
on there?
yeah.
Oh no, what I'm
PUBG
thinking of
didn't
is
make the list,
DayZ. I'm
but
thinking of DayZ.
you're thinking of DayZ.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So 2016, the other big thing I think was PUBG as the first big battle royale game.
Right.
And
it took the 64-player Battlefield map, turned it against the battle royale, fight for yourself.
I mean,
yeah,
so a big trend of like
It was
old
2017.
mods and stuff becoming official games, right? We talk about like Counter-Strike and Team Fortress,
Yeah.
how Dota became a thing. I remember seeing battle royale modes on custom servers back in Minecraft. I remember watching like friends and the younger kid siblings playing like these kind of battle royale games in Minecraft.
Yeah.
And then coming and seeing PUBG being a thing. I'm like, oh hey, I recognize this, because PUBG was built off of Arma, one of the Arma games.
Yep.
And so yeah, and same with DayZ, where these survival is a big thing. You tie that in with the roguelite rise, where like permadeath is a thing, and now onto this, like there's the through line behind it all.
yeah.
So like 2017 is when C&C Power Hour started streaming,
That's true.
and like one of the first games I ever streamed, especially solo, was PUBG.
Yeah.
And I actually got chicken dinner one time.
Hey!
and streamed it. So like that's my one win that I ever had.
And you got it on stream.
He
Get the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he retired champion afterwards. He never
Yeah.
played PUBG ever again.
Basically. I logged in recently because I heard something about there's like a whole bunch of new maps.
Yeah.
There's like 3 new maps or something like that. I don't know. It's ridiculous. 2017 was also the year of the Switch.
Yep.
Man, that
big release.
it is like the number one console seller right now.
Yeah.
Sorry. Small note: the SNES Classic, the sequel to the
for
NES
me,
Classic.
most of my nostalgia was with the Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
like
sure.
yes, I did own an NES back in the day, but that was before I was any very literate in video games at all. Like the Super Nintendo is where most of the stuff where my friends and I was playing with my friends.
Yeah.
Was the Super Nintendo period up until like N64 and Xbox. But yeah, I made a lot of my earliest friends over a Super Nintendo.
Sure.
That's awesome.
So to me, those games hold a special place in my heart, and also because they back in the day, the emulators for the Super Nintendo actually ran decently at hardware on the time.
They did. Yep.
Yeah. So real quick, there's a couple of games that we're gonna mention here. These are mostly indie games.
I just wanted to throw in there a whole bunch of the more Kickstarter stuff. Yooka-Laylee, Dead Cells, big games that got released. Yooka-Laylee, again, filling that gap that we don't see much anymore of the Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie kind of open world exploration kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we have stuff like Yooka-Laylee, which is the old Banjo-Kazooie folks, right? And then somewhere in here, I forgot to put in there A Hat in Time.
Right? Oh yeah.
Is similar, so it's like stuff like that,
Wow.
and reiterating the fact that indie games are filling the niche of old things that AAA developers either there is not a big enough market for this nostalgia, or AAA developers just don't want to take the risk into profitably filling that niche. Indie games are where it's at.
Yeah, for sure. So we were talking about PUBG, Fortnite.
Yep.
Got real big that year.
Yep.
That's it. No.
That's it. We're done.
Season 2.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Cuphead real quick. Cuphead was just this insane undertaking by an indie studio of like hand cell animation for video games.
It's from like 1960s era animation style. Yeah.
But it also took like the Dark Souls approach of difficulty, right?
Yep.
And having to learn the game's mechanics in and out, memorize some things.
It's a lot of it is memorizing like the layouts and boss patterns. Like Contra is the closest thing you could probably compare it to.
Yeah, it was very cool. Hollow Knight, the Sabaton Conundrum, which tweet your answers at WakeUpSuper, because that's Adam Sabaton's Twitter account, and he asks this question all the you come across a man in a man-sized jar question all the time. And you could, we've got a picture of him somewhere. Yeah,
right here.
Yeah, we'll zoom in. We'll zoom that out. Like we'll take a high-res scan of it and just blow it up onto the screen. Hollow Knight is great. It's kind of like 2D Dark Souls. And,
Dark Soul Metroidvania.
Yeah, it's a very there's
so much
difficulty, but there's a lot of content.
This is up there in terms of like Shovel Knight levels of success. in terms of at least being the Team Cherry, the developers behind it, just being committed and hitting every single goal that they committed to and knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
Like, it is a lot of stuff. There's the community behind unpacking all the lore behind it, because it takes very much the Dark Souls approach, where it's either told you in a very roundabout, cryptic way, or just like through like incidental bits, and you have to piece it back together.
Right.
But it doesn't take away from the fact that it's also a really fantastic game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy, we'll get to yours in a minute.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Lou, you want to talk about Hellblade and Doki Doki?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Just Hellblade was another one, is because at this era you start seeing these well-developed, Supergiant games, and like indie games are being so big that they are funding and making really, really good, high-quality, polished productions.
Mm-hmm.
Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is the one I wanted to pick out specifically, just because of how gorgeously animated and like visually how gorgeous that game is.
Yeah.
The facial models and rigs and the lighting and all that is absolutely amazing. And also in terms of giving a platform for people who don't normally see represented in games. Like Senua, the main character, suffers from schizophrenia, and they made a conscious effort to ask people who are suffering from all these other different who are neuroatypical, to make sure that their experience is accurately reflected, how the voices talk to them. She has voices talking to her all the time,
Right.
and how it reflects, and how she changes her hallucinations and perspective, and how that is accurately reflected and turned into gameplay.
Yeah.
And so, like, not only is this a gorgeous game, and the sequel trailer just got recently announced, but also the fact that it is an experience that is not typically seen or represented from your main character's perspective.
Yeah, and that I'm glad that you bring this up, put this game in here, because that's one thing that games can do, but you don't see a lot of.
Right.
Outside of the indie space, of we're going to put you in a situation of someone that exists, but you don't know how to empathize, or don't know that you need
Right.
a special perspective to empathize with.
Right.
And it's such a like powerful thing for games to do.
Right.
Because it like by putting you into that decision making, like it gives you so much agency that when things happen in the game, like
Yeah.
you kind of take it personally.
Because
right?
it is interactive. You are supposed to inhabit this character.
Yeah.
And so, like, you get seriously put in their shoes, and your decisions are their decisions, and you get to see the impact. I mean, you look at like a Tomb Raider reboot, and people were going on and on. Like, specifically, there were a lot of instances where the game designers, during certain like events or sequences, they specifically make it so that Laura turns around and looks behind her, so you get to see her face. You get to see the scared look on her face, to make you really go like, oh crap.
Yeah.
And to get a sense of like just how deep in it she is.
Mhm.
Right. So yeah. Next on there is opposite side of the spectrum.
Totally different.
Doki Doki Literature Club. So there's another aspect of my gaming history that I'm glossing over real briefly, but I have a surprisingly deep intersection with visual novels.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, Doki Doki Literature Club is like their first experience with this kind of stuff, where it's literally just a visual novel. It is a game where there's hardly any decisions. You're just reading and going through the story. What made Doki Doki Literature Club really interesting was that it was a meta horror game.
Yeah.
Where at first it looks like this typical, like, oh, you're just a dorky, dweeby little high school guy, and you all of a sudden get thrown in this situation with a lot of cute girls at a literature club. And things go horribly, horribly wrong afterwards. I don't want to spoil it too much, because it is still fresh enough that, it probably shouldn't take you too long to get into it. I mean, it's a fairly quick game. Again, a couple of hours.
Well, that's one of the things with the visual novels, is that it's very quick to get into, and there are multiple endings. And
yeah, well, visual novels can be deep well. So like I know the Fate series and Fate Stay Night are huge. If people know anything about, like, there's a series called Fate Grand Order. That whole universe, the original visual novel, is literally longer. It's like 3 times as long as the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And I played through that back in the day in college, and so like that got me into the whole scene of visual novels, and like that's another deep rabbit hole I can go and talk about. But just to gloss it over, and just to say, Doki Doki Literature Club is a visual novel, and it was a real thing that was a discussion, because the horror aspects of it, again, is the jumps, not really jump scares, but the twists and turns that it goes through, and the meta level of the narrative really got people discussing and talking, and being really good fodder for reaction videos and streaming.
Yeah.
Seriously, the Game Theorists, when MatPat did their playthrough on the Game Theorists Live, was fantastic. I loved it. It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about Battlefront 2 real quick. We've kind of glossed over games that use microtransactions this whole time. There are a couple that do, like PUBG, Fortnite, and Overwatch. And
Yeah, a lot of it kind of came about with the mobile gaming scene.
Yeah.
Right.
Where you could quickly and easily make a purchase on your phone of like,
Right.
oh, I need some more coins or I need some more whatever.
Farmville.
Farmville. Oh gosh, Facebook
Farmville.
games.
Facebook
games.
games.
Ooh.
Zynga.
Yeah.
That's something we
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
Man,
that-
yeah.
I remember that.
I'm
yeah.
glad we skipped over that.
Yeah. But it all kind of came to a head with Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
Or Star Wars Battlefront 2 by EA. So big that so much of a problem that the EU started regulating loot boxes as or classifying them as gambling, and it's sort of like there was a huge reaction to it, and how seriously microtransactions the entire game was, to just like pull profit out of people and then just like unabashedly do so.
Right.
And not that game companies shouldn't make a profit, but there's a line, and it's a really weird line.
Well, it's interesting
But-
because like it's interesting how League seemed to have done it so well in the very beginning, where it was
Mhm.
purely cosmetic.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times in that period in the early 2010s, where a lot of people were saying like, yeah, they specifically called out that they are copying League of Legends' model in terms of selling only cosmetics.
Yeah.
So just wanted to bring that particular little bit up.
Yeah, and that's sort of how it started outside of the mobile gaming space.
Right.
Right. It was just cosmetics to personalize your gameplay.
Right.
But then it became, oh, I need to pay to be able to play longer today, right? Or I can pay to make this part of the game easier.
The interesting about the pay to play longer stamina systems, because I remember playing a lot of online games that had stamina systems like that. I
Yeah.
don't quite remember some of them, but I remember in high school playing one like that, in which I actually, first season of playing, I managed to find breaking a strategy that almost broke the game and put me in the top echelon. Like I was literally instantly got recruited. Me and the buddy who introduced it to me, because I figured out this way to break the game. We instantly got recruited like the most exclusive guilds for
Mhm.
people who've been playing for the longest time. I gotta find my way to dig that back up again. But
Yeah,
it
please
was-
do.
Well, there are games like I remember some web games like that. I
Yeah.
remember some mobile games like that where like I forget exactly what they call it, but pay to wait or something like that. Where,
Yeah, like
or
the
Eve almost, where you start building something and you have to wait real time for it to finish building before you can do anything.
Right.
yeah.
Or you can pay to speed it up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can do that in Eve
Yeah.
necessarily, but
right.
it just makes me think about that. Of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and so that's one of like the dark sides of gaming as like profit extraction, and
yeah.
it's sort of unfortunate that it's a weird it's an unfortunate side effect of capitalism, but that's not within the scope of this podcast for sure. But it's definitely something that when you're playing games now, you have to watch out for, and
Yeah.
especially if you have kids.
Yep.
You have to make sure that if they have access to your funds for whatever reason, that they're spending it
Yeah.
well and spending it right. And
Yeah.
And then you realize little Timmy spent $300 on Fortnite dances.
Mm.
Yeah. yeah, exactly. And
I mean, they put in like iOS protections and stuff like just for those reasons.
just for those reasons, yeah, exactly. Which is insane. It's really impressive that it's sort of like come to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of when it all came to a head, and it seems to have been like since that year, sort of like backing out of the mainstream thing. It's going back to just cosmetics.
Right. Yeah, and I think kind of like the opposite of like the microtransaction system, the ecosystem, the whatever. Um, I think what games that I love the most, and I will continue talking about this, are like story-based games, or like what I got frustrated with at some point was the games where you have to buy stuff in order to play the game. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one thing to have a subscription to have it, or it's one thing to buy expansion packs, stuff like that. But when you have a game where it is fully supported by itself, it doesn't need any outside like microtransactions or any other additional purchases, is like the type of game for me, because I just want to play a really good game. Really good game, Horizon Zero Dawn. If you haven't played this game, it's a really good game. Like, and it's one of those I'm willing to spend $60 on a game to play something like this.
Yeah.
I think so. Back to kind of the Last of Us type of thing, where you have the very like emotionally connected kind of story. This is a game that I got drawn into real quick, not to spoil anything, but there's like you start the game and you sort of are in a cave and you don't really know when you are. You definitely don't know where you are. And you start in kind of this corner of the map, right? And suddenly, as the game progresses, you get this technology, and it's a little weird that you have technology, but everything looks kind of archaic, and suddenly you just kind of the world literally opens up. This is the definition of an open world game, where you can go anywhere and do anything. Of course, some of your skills will limit you as far as what you can do because you run into an area and there's a big monster that you have to fight, or dinosaur in this case, and pseudo dinosaur.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you see that and it's like, well, when and where am I? But I think what connected me the most is I was talking earlier about how The Last of Us could be something that actually happens. Horizon Zero Dawn is something that's a little bit closer to what could actually happen. Kind of the main premise of the story is technology sort of taking over, and that's been a theme for as long as technology's been around.
Yeah.
Whether it's AI taking over or
It goes as far back. Frankenstein is a
Yeah.
sci-fi book.
exactly. And so it has those themes of kind of old style literature or art that's been explored previously, but takes it into a new kind of environment of you're in this world that has been taken over by nature, and I was so connected to the story. And if you haven't played it, this is the game to play. If you don't like open world games, you can play it like a non-open world game.
Yeah.
Because you can follow the story. You don't have to do the other things that are, all the side missions. And it's really fun. And it doesn't have that like I'm gonna punish you for being a completionist like
Right.
another game Spider-Man did. I'm sorry, I love that game so much, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Horizon Zero Dawn, you got to play it.
So the last big thing to happen in 2017 is sort of like Japan's return to consoles.
I mean, I think it goes a little bit more with Switch too, just when Nintendo is back.
Yep, Nintendo being back in the the home console space, in a big way, and it was not just that because there were a couple of other huge
Yeah.
AAA
Oh yeah.
AAA Japanese titles released that year. So Persona 5 made its way to the US. Is the biggest thing for me that year. I played all of it.
Literally took a week off of work.
Literally took a week off of work and put over 100 hours into that game in the course of that week. And it was the third highest critically acclaimed game of 2017. It was a big freaking deal when it came out, and still is technically. I guess there's a re-release that's about to come out in a couple of months, and we're going to talk about that in a JRPG focused game or focused episode. But Resident Evil 7 came out that year. Totally sort of like scrapped, not kind of like set itself apart from the rest of the Resident Evil games because it was first person.
Oh yeah.
And you're playing a whole completely different character and in a very set aside part of the United States. And
it also really separated itself because ever since Resident Evil 4, they were pushing closer and closer to that action heavy kind of style. 5 and 6 definitely felt really out of place, and 7 was very much a return to the roots.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of these return to roots. I mean, Doom, same thing, right? Like Doom brought itself back to the old school rip and tear kind of visceral gameplay.
Yeah.
Resident Evil now again, like you are hunted, you are scared, you are trying to manage resources again.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it was a great thing to come back to. It also had a VR component, so you could play it in VR if you really wanted to on the PS4. If you did, you're a braver person than I am. There was also Nier Automata, Neo. Both of those came out that year. They were huge games.
Nier is interesting just because it's a Platinum Games, but also partnering with Yoko Taro, who was again up there with in terms of like auteur theory. If you want to talk about all that, he's quirky dude. Released the original Nier was also, I think, people call it underrated. I don't have as much experience with the original Nier, but it's the story behind that is also very interesting.
Yeah.
So.
And then also, with the launch of the Switch, Super Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart 8.
Yep.
Mario Kart 8 being one of the best-selling games of the entire decade.
Probably behind
somehow.
number 1 on the Switch, right?
Yeah, probably behind number 1 on the Switch, which we'll talk about in a minute. Because that didn't come out until 2018.
Well, no, I mean the system seller, Legend of Zelda. Breath
Legend
of
of
the Wild.
Zelda.
Yeah, the system seller that didn't come out with the system.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
I could have. Okay.
Yeah, because
now
it
I
came
feel
out.
like a complete jerk.
Because it came out at the beginning of 2018, right?
Yeah.
Well, because I
Right?
saw Legend of
Hold on.
Zelda Breath of the Wild is on the list in 2017.
Is it on the list in 2017?
It does
Yeah.
say
Oh,
it's
yeah,
on
it
the
is.
list in 2017.
Oh,
Which
it
is
is.
why
I'm
I was
sorry.
working.
I skipped
I was
over it.
working so hard to segue into.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I knew I skipped it for a reason. That's right. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, big freaking deal.
Yeah, big.
Big freaking deal.
First full-on Zelda game since.
Oh,
Skyward Sword?
Skyward Sword.
Okay, which was like 2012, I think,
Yeah, I think so.
maybe.
Yeah,
Uh,
because Skyward Sword was like,
'Cause there wasn't one on the Wii U, right?
that was
That was.
no, because so
Gabe, do you remember?
I think Wii U they did Twilight Princess HD and whatchamacallit?
Remake?
and Wind Waker
Yeah.
HD.
Okay,
Oh.
Thank you.
Skyward Sword was on the Wii. Okay.
Yeah,
I figured because
it
it had the
was
Wiimote, it had the sky thing. Yeah.
yeah, because
that's
you
right.
have the Wiimote
Yep.
and you're right-handed because that's
Yeah.
how most people use the
They
Wiimote.
did that with Twilight Princess as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, huge game. It's huge in the actual sense, in that it is a giant open world game
Yeah.
with a bunch of pointless or semi-pointless collectibles and all sorts of weird stuff that
Only
you can do
one
and
pointless
find.
collectible, I
Wait,
think.
Which ones are
One pointless one.
The seeds?
The seeds are
Yes.
are
Dang it.
pointless.
Well, pointless to complete. Collecting them
Oh,
in
okay.
general is useful.
Yeah, you can collect a couple hundred of them and you're fine. But if you get all 980 or whatever, you wasted your time. Huge game, super big, super. I think it's going to be one of the most influential ones
Mm.
coming out of the second half of the decade. I think it's going to be huge.
I'm currently playing through it, which is why this is relevant for me
Yeah.
asking these questions.
Right.
Yeah,
First time playing through.
and I hope Persona 5 is a super influential game because if you could like take style and just shove it into a video game, everything in Persona 5 just oozes. How do we make this menu as cool as possible?
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And it's really cool. The characters aren't the best and can be kind of like tropey a little bit, but it's a JRPG. You take what you get.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that sort of wraps up 2017.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of stuff to talk about in 2018. I think we can go through 2018 relatively quicker.
Probably not. So Spider-Man.
Rip.
Man, this is an open world game that I have loved playing. It is really good. Like not even just like the story necessarily, but it fits in with the Batman Arkham series as far as the fluid fighting mechanics.
Yeah.
Which is fun. It's really good. It is way too open world for me. It's like, oh, there's so much to do. So many little side missions. And part of it is you have to do these side missions to get like abilities or to get the cool spider suit that I really want, but I still haven't gotten yet because I haven't taken pictures of all the stupid buildings. I feel like, did Caleb do an episode on Spider-Man?
There was an episode of Spider-Man.
Go check that one out. We'll find out which one.
I'm pretty sure. Or if not, he's talked about it a lot in the hey, what you been up to?
Yep.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Red Dead Redemption 2. This is another one that I played, not the first one of, but the second of. I played a little bit of it. It's a GTA set in the 1800s or whatever.
The Wild West.
The Wild West, which is funny. It was really enjoyable, but it's an open world game that's kind of harder to get into.
Yeah, I've heard like one of my favorite descriptions of it was from one of the McElroy brothers. And it was like, I've come to the realization that Red Dead Redemption 2 is boring, and that's okay.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Right.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about that.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it so boring for me is, unlike in GTA where you can drive around in a fast car, like the fastest you can go is a horse gallop.
Yeah.
Which in an open world game is hard, and I'm having trouble with that in Zelda too, because it's like you got to run and you have stamina, and it runs out.
You don't have a
then you have
horse
to walk. You can get a horse, but the problem. Never mind. I don't want to go into that.
There are so many systems in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild that, for better or for worse, add a lot of difficulty to the game.
Yeah. Another game that I picked up, number 5 out of, is it number 5?
4.
Number 4, God of War. Never played the first 3. Played this one. Loved it.
It's real good.
It's a real good game. The mechanics are fantastic. The gameplay is fantastic. The story is fantastic. You've played it more recently than I have.
Yeah, I did. It was And I'd played the mainline console God of Wars, not any of the PSP ones.
Yeah.
But it was a really like touching tale of fatherhood, which is really
Oh yeah, that's true.
sort of
Yeah. What did he? Peter called it
Dad
Dad
of War.
Simulator.
Yeah, it's Dad of War.
Dad of War or boy simulator or boy yelling simulator and
Boy.
boy. And yeah, it's great. It stands on its own, like it catches you up. It's really interesting because like Kratos sort of starts the game like not wanting to talk about his past, and so the
Right.
game just treats it like it doesn't really matter until it does.
That's what it does.
And it's
Until halfway through, because I've watched the like a game walkthrough of it, or not just like a cinematic playthrough of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like halfway through, I'm like, oh, are they going to? Oh, they did.
yeah. And it's like it rewards you for like if it doesn't punish you for not knowing the greater God of War story.
But if
it
you
re-
know, you understand the impact of it.
Yeah, you understand the impact a little bit more, and you can just watch a couple of videos on YouTube. Like there was one that I saw that just caught you up in like 20 minutes because I hadn't played the handheld ones, and I was like, I kind of want to get caught up on the story of those just in case it comes up.
I don't think you missed out too much on the handheld ones. I've played them.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, they were fine. Like they were fun as a distraction, but like they're not like super important in context.
Yeah. That was my understanding. And yeah, it won Game of the Year that year for reasons. Yeah, it's a great narrative piece, with great game systems, very rewarding Dark Souls-ish combat system, and definitely worth playing still. You know, it's not that long ago that it came out. It's only 2 years, and definitely worth checking out. So what else came out that year? So a bunch of indie stuff.
Yep.
Celeste.
Big one is Celeste. I unfortunately I sort of have to admit that I have not actually played Celeste, but I
Likewise.
know so much about it, and people keep on talking about it. So I just wanted to throw it up there just to say that hey, we're not forgetting about it.
Yeah.
A couple of other big ones and a lot of discussion that I remember seeing was Into the Breach, which is really interesting turn-based strategy, turn-based tactics kind of game. Return of Obra Dinn, which is another really interesting, really clever game in which, again, this is like paperwork made interesting.
Yeah.
You are an insurance guy. So basically, so literally, the Obra Dinn is like the ship that has been missing for years.
Sounds like the Penniless.
Finally,
Good
sails,
news.
Good news.
Finally,
You are
sails into port. Like this is like the Age of Sail kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this ship that has gone missing basically returns almost like a ghost ship. And you are the insurance claims person. And you have this magical compass. The conceit, the suspension of disbelief part is you have a magical compass. And then if you come upon remains, you get to teleport to the moment that they died.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So effectively, it's like in Batman where like he has the computer reconstruct the crime scene kind of deal.
Yeah.
So you, at each moment, when you find remains or find scraps, you can teleport to the moment that that person died. And all you have is a ledger of like who was on the ship, who the ship's manifest of like who was on there, what their roles were, and like maybe like one picture of like the crew. And your idea is to figure out what happened to whom and whether or not you need to pay out the families for what happened to each single person.
Oh wow.
So it's like a reverse murder mystery where you have to figure out exactly what happened to all these people on this ghost ship.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's super interesting. And I just wanted to point that out. It's just like a really cool game that shows you the really fun stuff that the indie games can do.
Yeah.
Subnautica VR. So Subnautica and Subnautica VR. So ever since Minecraft, you had those survival games, right? We had like Ark. We have that Conan game. Whole bunch of these, like, when DayZ spread out for between the battle royale genre and the straight-on survival build stuff. Like you see the influence of Minecraft now way more, where it's crafting is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right, crafting and survival. So Subnautica is really interesting because it brought back some narrative in there. Because I know Minecraft has a bit of a story mode-ish, not fantastic, but Subnautica very much so.
Yeah.
Gris, it just turns a very pretty indie game that's got a lot of people talking. The Messenger is the one I've played. Definitely really cool is that it is an old school mixture of like old school Ninja Gaiden.
Okay.
But then as you play through, it's like 8-bit style Ninja Gaiden. But then the twist in the between is to realize that you are in sort of like a time loop. And then it flips itself into the future where you're now in 16-bit SNES era graphics and music. And then the game opens up into be a Metroidvania.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So the original levels that you were traversing now all of a sudden become big maps that you can explore, and you're doing this time-hopping scenario of like trying to save the world from calamity because you are the messenger that you're supposed to bring back a message and usher them in the next hero to do all this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's really, really super neat. I wanted to bring up the next one. It's Iconoclast, another really gorgeous old school graphic pixel indie game in the vein of like Owlboy and all that other stuff. in particular because the developer, the one guy, his name is Joachim Sandberg, Konjac. This guy is very distinctive art style, does a whole bunch of stuff by himself. I've been playing this guy's games for the longest time, ever since high school. I absolutely love this guy, and I just wanted to give him a shout out because Iconoclast is fantastic, and the rest of his stuff, whether there's an old series of games called Noi to Love, which are absolutely amazingly fun. Chalk, like all the stuff he even did on like a Legend of Zelda spoof kind of thing that he released. So this guy just a whole bunch of like freeware indie games. Noi to Love 2 was sold, but either way, like this guy is fantastic, and I definitely wanted to shout that out. It's a really cool game.
Yeah. Something I've been playing recently, like in the last week, is a game called Frostpunk.
Yeah.
It popped up on Origin Access as this like end of the world apocalypse, but it's set in like the 1830s, and it's actually set in a time where there was record low temperatures in the world. There was a
Whole world was freezing over.
Yeah, there was a volcano that exploded like in 1839.
Oh yeah, Krakatoa, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And then it's the year without a summer.
Yeah, basically. And so it kind of takes that and turns it into like a real-time strategy, resource management type of game where you're building buildings and trying to essentially survive these like the cycles of day and night and freezing. And it's sort of set in a steampunk world too.
Right.
So you're generating steam.
Frostpunk.
Yeah, so Frostpunk, exactly. So it's really fun. It's really good. Another game I was playing recently is A Plague Tale: Innocence, also off of Origin Access.
And I believe this is another one of those like AA indies where like this is an indie dev team and somehow managed to punch way above their weight in terms of graphics.
100%. So what's really cool about this game is that they generated like the idea is that it's 1800s Europe or France.
Right?
Yeah, and you're another one of those that takes you into the story of you're a girl with a little brother who's got this kind of disease, and the idea is that you're trying to get past all the guards and stuff like that, sort of in the stealthy way of trying to get the cure, basically. And you team up with a bunch of other kids. So that's like the other cool part is the idea is the innocence where you're just a bunch of children literally trying to save the world from this plague that's happening. But technically what they did is fantastic, where they basically use I don't even know, like separating out your cores of your CPU to generate different layers of rats. Because that's the thing, plague in that time was all about the rats. So maybe it's like the 1600s or 1700s, something like that, 1500s. And so I was watching a video or an article about it where like the first layer of rats is fully rendered, and it's essentially rendered as a liquid, like a watery liquid. And as you go, you're carrying like a torch, a light, and the rats will react to that. And there's basically an aura around you or an area around you where the rats are not. And so like I said, the first layer of rats are all fully rendered. The second layer have like some rendering and like progressively down, but they found a way to use like all of the cores of your CPU and all the VRAM on your GPU that just like completely render this, and it works seamlessly. It's so beautiful. Probably one of the more immersive games that I've played recently.
Very intense.
Yeah, very intense. Very like you feel for these characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Really good.
So
very linear too.
Yeah.
Oh,
say that.
A couple of things. Big release end of the year. Smash Brothers Ultimate, biggest video game to release in quite some time. I think most recently they were announcing that this is the highest selling fighting game of all time.
Yep.
So absolutely crazy, big thing. I've got lots to say about it, but just going to mention that it's huge. Another one that we wanted to briefly mention is Monster Hunter World was released sometime this time. I started getting into Monster Hunter around this time too, right? Because I was playing it because my friends and I were trying to find something to do before Smash Brothers, and we were playing Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate on the Switch for a big chunk of time. But Monster Hunter World, I just wanted to shout out just because it streamlines. I haven't played it much, but from what I understand, watching and hearing people talk about it, it streamlined a lot of the clunkier aspects of traditional Monster Hunter and made it accessible to the masses.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, to the world. And because I was playing Monster Hunter's Generations, and I was like, why do I have to do this? Why can't I do that? Or why is it, oh, look, sorry, intermission for dog with squeaky toy.
Dog and squeaky toy.
Get him, Chris. Get him.
Got him. We're leaving that in, right? We're all on one take. So.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, so Monster Hunter World just streamlined so many different things that were frustrating in the original Monster Hunter that I eventually learned to get around. But I was just like, when I first played, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm excited. I'm not as into it at the moment, but I'm sure, like, the people who are into it is just, yeah, good for you guys. Like, I'm really happy that Monster Hunter World is super successful. Iceborne recently came out,
Yep.
the expansion. Like, just watching, just being able to see a new generation of people getting super into it. It was just like, all right, cool. I sort of appreciate why it's so big versus, all of the giant Japanese franchises, your Final Fantasies, your Fire Emblems,
Yeah.
your Personas. You sort of get a sense of like, all right, cool. Like, this is nice. They are innovating and making it accessible to the masses.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or to expand their audience.
Yep. And then and sort of like the esports world, 2018, the Overwatch League started,
Right.
which
Yep.
was a really interesting new take on how to handle esports teams.
Mhm.
So instead of them being, like sponsored groups, either sponsored by the company or sponsored by, other companies, right? These are more like local basketball franchises.
Mhm.
Like they're very local based teams, and it was a really interesting way to try to get people more invested into esports teams. And I don't really know how well it's gone. I just really fell out of the
Right.
Overwatch
With your
scene, but
injury, like
yeah, with my injury, because like knowing that I could never make it.
I do know there's like some trouble now because a lot of the shoutcasters are quitting.
Yeah,
So it seems like there's some trouble in the ranks.
yeah, but it's a very interesting take, and I really hope that it succeeds. It's pretty cool, and I would rather see that model than Red Bull sponsoring a team or whatever. And
Mhm.
but that's its own thing, and that sort of wraps it up for 2018.
yeah.
And of course, the list, we've been here for a long time, but the list is not exhaustive.
Nope.
Far
Pretty
from it.
good, and it's cultivated. It's
Yeah.
stuff that we loved, stuff that
Yep.
we thought was impactful.
Mhm.
2019 took us into a really fun time,
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This was a great year. A bunch of big freaking deals
Yeah.
coming out or being talked about this past year. So I gotta.
I was gonna say, I think
Yeah.
this is the culmination of like what we've been talking about for the last like 6 years
Yeah.
of indie games really almost coming to match
Yeah.
AAA games.
Yeah,
As
for
far
sure.
as being recognized, being able to get out there. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
don't know, just hitting the social sphere.
Right. I mean, just being popular, being recognized in the mainstream, right? Like right now, the Switch is giving massive exposure to all these indie games. Like Nintendo has always struggled, especially like the Wii U era and the Wii era with like second and third party developers.
Yeah.
Now there's just because of the ubiquity of the Switch and how popular that is, people can release stuff on the Switch. And there's a lot of ports. I'm going to be discussing a couple of stuff I've been playing this year are ports onto the Switch that just it's so much easier to play.
Well,
Yeah.
and like you were talking about earlier, there was the Ouya that was
Yeah.
like playing your mobile games on the TV. This is a mobile game on your TV because
Yep.
you can plug it in. It's a console,
Yeah.
but you can lay in bed and play a video game if
Yep.
you wanted to, and
Yeah.
not like it's amazing. I think I think probably the most standout-ish game would be Untitled Goose Game.
Oh yeah.
That
as
is
far
the
as
meme game. Yep.
indie games making it to the big time.
Right.
Just a little peek behind the scenes here. It's only referenced in our show notes as honk.
Yep.
Too appropriate.
Yeah, but if you somehow have not seen Untitled Goose Game,
Heard of it or
just buy it. Just buy it and
think it's
play
like-
it for 3 hours. It's 15
It
bucks.
is pure
Yeah.
slapstick. Like that's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, it's the most gamiest game.
Gamiest game.
It's so cute, and the soundtrack is really fascinating because it's a dynamic soundtrack, and
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, it's so great.
yeah,
The technical aspects of that is from a musician's point of view, that's fantastic.
yeah.
if you like that, boy, do I have a recommendation for you
Oh,
that comes
great.
to music. It's a game called Ape Out.
Ooh.
It is you are a captive gorilla that you break out and effectively just escape and you literally ape out.
Perfect.
But the whole point is that entire soundtrack is literally a freestyle jazz thing. Like like every time you like punch a guard or something, and
Yeah.
their body splatters against the wall, is a cymbal crash and all that stuff. The whole thing plays. The whole aesthetic is like a vinyl LP,
Mm-hmm.
and as you play it, it's like you're freestyling your own your own
perfect.
jazz thing that's going on. It is so cool. I
Very
have to
similar.
show it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say throwback. A Plague Innocence is very much like that.
Yeah.
The
Okay,
music reacts to what you're doing.
Yeah,
Which is-
that's true.
Gosh.
Is this like the Resident Evil syndrome though, when the music finally calms down, you realize like out of the woods, you're like, oh, okay, good.
Sort of, because yes, but I mean it can pick back up at
Yeah.
any second.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So yeah, like Untitled Goose Game sort of took the internet by storm, rightfully so,
Yeah.
as it has its own great little aesthetic. And
That I remember the trailer was gone for it was like 2016 or something, where the first trailer ever popped up.
Yeah.
So it was like it's been in development for a while. I think it's been cooking for a bit.
Question: would you consider Wizards of the Coast a indie game
a small
developer?
indie game developer, considering all the problems they have with their game, yeah, I
Rip.
certainly would.
Oh, hot take right there.
There was a thing called Magic Arena that officially launched in 2019.
Yeah.
With the Throne of Eldraine set release that they released in paper at the same time.
Yeah.
Obviously, Arena had been around in public beta for a while, and then even private beta back into 2017, which is kind of one of the other things that we originally streamed here at the C&C Power Hour. That's been fun. That's been interesting. They have a sort of pay-to-win type of model, which is hard, but in a trading card game,
Yeah, it's more of a pay-to-play rather.
yeah.
'Cause
Yeah, I mean, you can
I
play
often hear
though.
people saying pay to be competitive.
Pay to be competitive. Yeah,
competitive.
I like that because like
That's-
the more you put into it, the easier it is to be competitive,
Yeah.
effectively competitive.
Yeah.
But you can play the game entirely for free, which is not normally how you're able to play Magic, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it's true.
it's a great entry point. It
Also,
has
a
its
great
own
way
problems,
of
but-
organizing a tutorial.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the intro to Magic in the Arena system is actually great.
Yeah.
The way that you can learn how to play, if you've never played Magic, you can pick up Arena and you can learn how to play and actually play. Like,
Yeah.
it teaches you all the mechanics.
Yeah.
The only thing it doesn't do online or on Arena, which is hard, is kind of the nuances of like turn or like
Priority.
priority, basically how you take your turn, because
Yeah.
everything's more or less controlled automatically.
Yeah.
Which can be hard, but Arena's great. We love playing it. I've been playing it this past week, so
Yeah.
good.
It also has its own like impact on not only like on the Twitch scene because there's tons of streamers playing Magic.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Other streamers play Magic, and
Uh,
also it's being the standard for like the Pro Tours and stuff now too.
Yeah.
Yep, for better or for worse, and that's neither. I don't think that we'll ever go that deep on Magic in
Yeah.
Cause We're Nerds episode, but for better or for worse, yeah, they are taking the pro level Magic tournament stuff and putting it on Arena, despite some of the flaws that Arena has, and but you know it's flashy and it's fun, it's
Yeah,
quick.
they're trying to make
and-
it esports.
Yeah, they're making it an esports as opposed to paper sports, sports,
Table sports.
table sports. But yeah, so those were the two like I guess I would call those indie games. Lou, you dropped a couple. Then we'll talk about the big mainstream stuff.
All right, so a couple of just highlights I wanted to just shout out. Baba Is You is a mind bender of a puzzle game.
Okay.
Just if you want to teach people programming or something, this is also really interesting.
Oh.
But basically, the whole thing is built upon the concept of Baba is you. So you are this little rabbit named Baba, and there are blocks on the thing that's like says the words Baba is you is blocks. And so what happens is that then you start pushing blocks around, and then there's words. For example, like flag is win. So if you touch the flag, you win. But the thing is, then you can move the thing. So you can move like flag is something else. If you put you in front of the flag, so flag is you, all of a sudden you're moving the flag now.
Yeah.
So like you can literally muck with the rules of the entire game in
Okay.
this thing. Like you have to visually see this in order to understand what is
Yeah.
going on. But there's stuff like water is death or something, right? So like if you touch water, you die. But if you move the death block out of the water, so water is blah, like water no longer kills you instantly.
Yeah.
So,
So
like,
it's like coding Scribble knots.
yeah, effectively. It's,
All right.
But the thing is, like, the idea is you also then have to figure out how to rearrange the blocks in such a way to actually solve the puzzle and get to the finish line. But
Interesting.
it is mind-bending. It is up there with like The Witness in terms of like, all right, slowly teaching you more and more aspects of the game until you finally understand, and then you realize certain things, and it's just like, I haven't played through the entire thing myself. I've like played it with a friend a little bit, and like borrowed his thing and messed around with it, and like I can appreciate it that this is a crazy, crazy game.
Okay.
Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. So this is another Kickstarter game. This is one that I've also personally kickstarted. Bloodstained is basically Iga. What is it?
I can never remember his last name.
Yeah, but basically the guy who produced a majority of the most popular Castlevania games.
Yeah.
Is it Kogarashi? Something like that.
Maybe.
But basically, he went ahead and said, all right, cool. I got kicked out of Konami. They don't want to make my games anymore. Screw it. I'm going to kickstart my own game.
Yeah.
And he effectively did. And Bloodstained Ritual of the Night came out. And it is a classic old school Castlevania. Lots of fun. What's really interesting is you compare it to the advances that have been made in the indie space, your Hollow Knights, your Axiom Verges. It feels decidedly old school and clunky, which is really interesting.
Okay.
Think about it that way. But like still, it's still totally worth playing. And it's, yeah, lots of fun.
Okay.
And then when I was talking about earlier about games being ported to the Switch, Slay the Spire was all the rage a couple of years back on the PC.
Yeah.
It is a deck-building, dungeon-crawling roguelite where your attacks are the hand of cards that you draw, and you get to build your deck as you move along through the dungeon. And I've been playing that way too much when I had it. Like I was staying up way too late playing it. Really, really good. I highly enjoyed it because in Magic, I love drafting.
Yeah.
So like that stuff is tons of fun. Man, Sayonara Wild Hearts was another thing I played a lot of recently that I just actually finished the initial game, the main game portion of the game over the holiday season. It is basically what they call a pop art album as a video game.
I was gonna say, not a music game.
It is. It is.
rhythm
It
game.
is basically like it is.
It is music as a game, as
Yeah.
opposed to being a
Yeah.
rhythm game.
As a
Yeah,
game
yeah.
in the form of like a interactive music video.
Yeah.
Effectively.
That's awesome.
And it is really cool. It's just aesthetic.
I see
Yeah,
it all
I'm not
over
sure.
like the top charts
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
everything. Is like one of the best games of 2019.
Yeah. It's something that I've wanted to play, but I've like had my eye on it a lot because aesthetically it's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the music itself is really good. Like, it looks like a game after my own heart, basically. Like it looks like something that I would love because I'm a big fan of rhythm games, and I'm not necessarily great at them, but I have a lot of fun playing them.
Right.
They're great, and Sayonara Wild Hearts. It's apparently like very touching and very very
Yeah.
interesting.
It's all about like basically healing after heartbreak.
So I'm excited to finally get my hands on it. It's not on the PS4 yet. That's what I'm waiting for.
Is it coming out on the PS4?
It is early this year, so
Okay.
it should be out soon.
Okay.
I think it's February. So that sort of does it for
The indie game.
The indie games.
Unless, what do you want to consider
Mm.
Kojima's next thing? Like, he is an indie developer now.
Kojima is an indie developer now. Death Stranding finally came out after a couple of cryptic trailers, and
Post-apocalyptic postman simulator.
You're
Apocalyptic postman.
post-apocalyptic UPS guy. The game. I haven't actually played it. I've seen a lot of. I've seen it played, and I've seen a lot of discussion about it.
Mhm.
It's as weird as a Kojima game can get.
Yep. When you unhinge him from any terms of actual reality.
Yeah, but it was still super successful, right?
Yeah.
So, without having the weight of the Metal Gear Solid fandom behind it, it's really, really interesting, and I'm super excited to see that, you don't necessarily need big publishers anymore.
Yeah.
They don't have to make the decision for you, and
Right.
that's something that sort of like comes up all throughout the 2010s, not just here, but in
Right.
filmmaking and comic
Right.
books and
Using crowdfunding
music.
to gauge interest.
Yeah.
Right. Like when you get that support from the fan base to say, I can serve a need that has not been fulfilled. I just request an upfront payment for it, but it helps try to ensure that people get what they want, and also be able to tell people like, hey, there is a untapped market for this stuff.
Yeah, and so it's really really interesting that is like where we're at now, and I'm really excited for the future for it.
Yep.
Because there are these big companies that have just sort of like had a stranglehold on interesting things and
Mhm.
Yep.
things like that. Even though they also the flip side of it is they allow some things to be published because they have the backing for it.
Right.
But I really like this move to people being able to pay for what they want.
Yeah.
Right? And that not only comes across in video games and a lot of the other stuff, but casual content production.
Mhm.
YouTube, like Twitch.
We wouldn't be here.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here. Twitch, Patreon, Ko-fi or Coffee, but
Yeah.
all of those things. It's it's a really fascinating evolution, and Death Stranding being like sort of like the pinnacle of that, right?
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't crowdfunded, but it is a developer saying, hey, I'm or my team and I are worth it on their own to be able to do this. And it's
Yeah.
really really fascinating that that's come out.
Yeah, something I've been playing recently is the Star Wars Jedi game, Fallen Order, which is actually really fun.
I heard the combat's really good.
Yeah, combat's pretty good. It
Oh,
was really
you've gotten over the combat?
so the first couple times I played it I played it on the hardest, not the hardest difficulty, but even like medium-ish, medium hard, and man, it was hard.
Yeah.
I was surprised, but it's not quite like your normal hack and slash type of game because you have there's a lot more mechanics and a lot more. Obviously, you're using the Force.
Yeah.
I thought it was great as far as I'm like maybe 35% of the way through of the story. But it's good. It's really good. Caleb did an episode. Caleb and Courtney, I think it was episode like 96, 97, I think.
Yeah.
So you should definitely go check it out. You can learn more about Star Wars Jedi. Hello, somebody.
Yeah. This was you too, right?
Yeah, this is me
this
too.
announcement was a big deal.
This is a big deal. Half-Life Alex, aka Half-Life maybe episode 3, sort of. Half-Life 2, episode 3.
Episode Half-Life episode 2, episode 1.
Yeah. So this is back in November. They announced Half-Life Alex, which is kind of a VR exclusive take on the Half-Life world. I imagine it's going to be basically a hardware demonstration for Valve's own VR system called the Valve Index, which, if you haven't heard, has been completely sold out since they announced the Half-Life Alex. It's supposed to launch in March 2020, but I think the Valve Index is kind of it's the first VR system with like finger recognition, not just like seeing it from, because there's like the inside out perspective on VR where you have a camera on your headset and it's looking at your hands and what your hands are doing. There's also the outside in where you have monitors kind of spaced 6 feet or so away from you.
The towers and stuff.
The towers that are kind of looking at you and you can see it. But this has a fifth dimension, I don't know, of like sensors for your fingers, so you can actually get the
So one of
the finger. I don't know.
One of the Oculuses had like further finger control.
They did as an add-on. So this is the first like inherent like built into the controller. Everything's like first party. I'm super excited about it, and if I can save up enough money, I'm getting it.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be my first foray into VR, and when I do it, it's like when I go into VR, it's going to be the Valve.
I'm contemplating jumping onto the Quest sometimes. I think that's the standalone one.
Yeah, the Quest is a standalone.
So that one, just as a way to dip the toe in, is wireless too. And if need be, you can also do the link, so it's a pass-through. So that way you just go right ahead and just hook it right up. So who knows? I'm interested in giving that a shot sometime. I don't think I've found too many things yet that it's like the killer app for me. I know Super Hot VR is supposed to be really good.
Yeah.
Boneworks is supposed to be super interesting, but who knows? I haven't gotten anything that makes me go, yeah, I want that.
So VR in its current form exists in like 3 or 4 different levels. Like there's the $200 to $300 level, which is I think it's the Quest might be around that price, where it's a standalone system. You're not getting a whole you're buying into the ecosystem. There's the Quest Rift. No, yeah, sorry, the
Oculus Rift.
S, which is like $400, which plugs into, you can play on Steam. I think you can play on other PC platforms. I don't think you can play it with PlayStation.
Right.
But again, then there's the PlayStation VR, which is, I think that's in that $200 range, $300 range.
But you have to already have the console.
Yeah, you already have to have a console too. So then there's like the pro level. So there's the HTC Vive Pro, which is like the $600 to $800 level. And Valve Index is actually probably the most expensive system out there. But it is complete at $1,000 because you get 2 towers, you get the 2 controllers, you get the headset. It's not wireless. The HTC Pro starts at $800 for just the headset, and then it's like $100 for the controllers, and then like $50 for the towers, stuff like that. So it gets expensive really quickly.
That was sort of the value proposition of the Quest, is because it does the room scale VR without the requirements of the towers. It just uses all the cameras it has externally to try to map itself and orient itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about it before with VR, but I think the Valve Index is going to be huge this year. But we definitely wanted to mention that as kind of because it sold out so quickly, based on an announcement
Yeah.
of Half-Life Alyx back in November, December.
Yeah. A couple other games that sort of came out that we didn't really get to play, but
Right.
Outer World, Outer Worlds,
The Outer
The
Worlds.
Outer World.
the yeah, the Outer
Sorry.
Worlds, yeah, that's what I thought. So that the biggest newest release from Obsidian, you know, the people that did Fallout New Vegas and South Park,
Not to be confused with Outer Wilds, which is a really interesting indie game.
yeah, that came out
Yeah.
the same year,
Yeah.
the same month.
Like a year. Well, I think it was a little bit before that.
Was it?
I feel
Okay.
like it's been talked about for like a year before Outer Worlds.
Okay, I thought they came out at the same time.
No.
But yeah, that was kind of successful. I say kind of because like it from what I can tell is like it's really fun initially and then it sort of like drops off. But not every game is perfect. Borderlands 3
Yep.
also came out finally, and it's interesting because it was the first one that didn't have Mikey Newman writing it, who wrote 1 and 2, and he is someone that I thoroughly enjoy. I thoroughly enjoy his content and everything that he does. And Borderlands 3 seems to have be holding its own.
Yeah.
It was pretty well received. Dauntless officially launched. It was
Free to play Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like the Fortnite of monster hunting.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Huge thing on Twitch.
Yeah.
Is it? I've been meaning to
Somehow.
give that a try sometime because I like my Monster Hunter and I don't know if I want to jump into Worlds just quite yet. But this looked interesting enough. I don't know if it has as many things that I can easily transfer over from Monster Hunter, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. I've seen a couple of people play it, and it seems like a lot of fun.
Once you get
but
into
it's
the
big.
Monster Hunter stuff, like it can be pretty fun.
Yeah. Okay.
I know that was on our list of possibilities. We were trying to figure out what our next thing to stream was.
Oh,
Before
yeah.
we settled on Destiny.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true. That is true. And then I want to talk about a couple of more big console JRPG games, right? The Resident Evil 2 remake came out.
Yeah, when are you gonna stream that?
Yeah, I never will at this point. I'm planning on finishing Bloodborne day of recording, like today.
Okay.
But I don't know if I actually will. And then I have Final Fantasy 7 starts at the beginning of March.
Well, they delayed Final Fantasy 7.
What? No, they didn't.
The remake?
remake.
Yeah.
From the 3rd?
Yeah, no, it's been delayed.
Again.
Since when? When did this news drop? 'Cause
Like last week.
Yeah.
Was it last week? Oh, never mind then. Well, now my schedule's cleared up. I might be able to stream it.
Yeah.
Persona 5, The Royal comes out at the end of March. Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, can we check on that? Just
Yeah.
Thank you.
Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind is going to be like a $30 huge DLC pack that comes out at the end of January. And I'm super stoked for it. Like, by the time this episode is out, I think. Maybe. At least that weekend, I think. And I'm going to be playing the crap out of that. So that might take up all my stream slots in February.
More Kingdom Hearts.
More Kingdom Hearts.
For
Really?
Final Fantasy, yeah.
Man, that's a
They
shame.
also delayed Cyberpunk too.
They did, yeah. I do remember them delaying Cyberpunk.
Yeah, this was the 14th, so it was this week.
Okay.
Earlier this week.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, okay, so
Last week, I mean.
early, yeah, right. But yeah, no, that gives me even less time to play Persona 5 The Royal, which is a shame. So yeah, that's my future streaming schedule. I might be able to fit it in. But I want the Resident Evil 2 remake, super high fidelity graphics and sort of like combining Resident Evil 2 with the Resident Evil 5 and 6 action RPG elements.
Yeah.
And it looks really interesting. I've seen a lot of people play it and it looks like a lot of fun. And
if you want something real silly though, there is a whole series of Resident Evil 2, but with the facial animations up to like 200%. It is amazing.
That I thought you were going with Resident Evil 2, but we've replaced Mr. X with Thomas the Tank Engine or something else like that. But no, I haven't seen that. I'll have
that
to
one
find
is
that.
real good.
But yeah, they're like on PC. You can mod Mr. X,
Yeah.
who is like this force of nature in the game that just sort of like follows you around. And one of the things I don't like about it is that like it seems like he shows up too much compared to the original game. And I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of the original Resident Evil series. And we'll see. I'll play it eventually. But That came out. Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Yep.
Uh,
A lot of my friends are into it. I've mentioned previously, Fire Emblem is not really my jam. I've mentioned before, I liked Advance Wars. I like my units to be faceless, equal, and indistinguishable, and what is it, disposable?
Yeah, expendable.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really like, for example, any of like my horsemen are different. Like I don't care that one archer is better at shooting this thing versus another,
Mm.
or like this knight is the sword knight and this knight is the lance knight. Like I
Yeah.
don't care. Like I just want my tanks to be tanks.
Yeah.
There you
Which
There's
is why
also
I love Wargroove.
go.
I've been really enjoying Wargroove.
yeah. Also, the first console Pokemon Sword and Shield or
Yep.
Pokemon games.
I
Pokemon Sword and
haven't
Shield.
played any Pokemon games since Gold and Silver, really.
Likewise.
Although I did replay a bunch of Fire Red
Mhm.
for a little bit. So that's like Gen 3. Technically, I did play a bunch of Gen 3. So yeah, I haven't really been getting back into Sword. I haven't been getting back into Pokemon. I played a little bit of Go. That's about it.
Okay. Yeah, it's there's a bit of a controversy around Sword and Shield.
The decks, yeah, but then
Yeah.
with the newest pack and then all that jazz, like they're sort of
Mm,
depends on what you feel about.
mm.
Like, yeah, they're charging you money for it.
Yeah, not even that. Like just the animations itself
Oh,
is
that's a
not.
different story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there are many aspects of it. Not necessarily that it's not
Yeah.
a great game. It's still a Pokemon game that people have
Yeah.
a lot of fun with. And if that's your thing, then you probably already have it. I don't
Yeah.
know what else I would say about
I've
it.
seen a lot of people at the airport with Switches, and like when I walk past them, they were playing Pokemon usually.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then the
I
biggest.
think that was it for about 2019. Yeah.
Oh, although I guess one thing briefly, because I realize a friend of mine is probably gonna give me flack about it if I ever get him to listen to this episode. Like I mentioned, he's the guy I played with in college who's a big Sega fan. He's probably gonna give me a little flack about Sonic Mania in terms of like
Yeah.
in terms of like just being indie games, or at least people understanding that we got to go back to the classics and like weaponizing nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like Sonic Mania, finally, old school 2D Sonic, and they had a whole bunch of folks like Christian Whitehead. He was like known to be like a Sonic modder. He was the guy who was responsible for one of the Sonic ports onto like Android or something.
Mhm.
He just knows Sonic inside and out. And so they got like prominent members of the Sonic fan community to write the music, design the levels, and do everything in terms of the game.
Wow.
And so like Sonic Mania is a great demonstration of what it could be if you engage in the community of people who know what it is that they want, and being able to reconnect with what made the original so special to people.
Yeah.
Because you look at some of the 3D Sonics, they just seem so out of touch, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, just wanted to give a shout out, because otherwise he's probably going to yell at me about it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you talk.
Thanks. Biggest release in 2019 for me was
Oh, for you, yeah.
was definitely Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, that's right.
That came out last about a year ago, almost exactly, and
Yeah.
it was a huge deal because it was the first console Kingdom Hearts game in 12 years, something like that. There had been a couple on on handhelds, but a couple of them that actually like had story, like you needed to play them to really understand all the stuff that's happening in 3. But it was huge, and I'm looking forward to replaying it. And I never replay games. I almost never replay them. But when the DLC drops at the end of the month, I'm super excited
You're going to start from
to
the
go through
beginning?
it. I'm going to start from the beginning because they released Critical Mode at some point in December
Okay.
or November, and I just haven't sat down and played through it on Critical Mode,
Right.
which is like a much harder difficulty. And they're adding a couple of different difficulty modifiers in the upcoming pack. And I'm not sure if the all of the content in the pack is available post game.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to go through the game again, and I'm excited because it was on top of like being this big flashy action RPG game. It's a really good emotional ending to almost 20 years of story, and because 2001 was the first Kingdom Hearts game, so 18 years, and it's really interesting because like the community has sort of like grown up with it, and a lot of members in the community haven't actually grown up, but it's been a really fascinating game series to come to more or less to a close. There will be more, but a lot of like the main story saga came to a close in 3, and it was a huge deal for not just me, but a lot of people. And super glad that finally came out, and it was I would say it was worth the wait. honestly, and not a lot of sequels are. Uh,
The question is, do you think they're going to then monetize it and put in another sequel somewhere along the lines, find an excuse to put another sequel hook?
Yeah.
oh, of course, there's already a sequel hook. There's gonna be more, and I'm okay with that because I love spending time with these characters.
Right.
But in the sense of like the story that they introduce in Kingdom Hearts 1, it is the end of that story. But the story that there are other story hooks that they introduce throughout the
Right.
rest
Because,
of the
well, I
games.
mean, that's sort of what I'm feeling for, like, I was thinking of Halo, the whole
Mhm.
series, right? Like,
Mhm.
3 was a very definitive, nice, clean end of the saga. And then somehow they had to re-dredge that back up for, like, 4, 5, and 6,
Yeah.
right? Or whatever it is, 4, 5, and upcoming Infinity. It's particularly on my mind because a lot of my friends now are playing the Master Chief Collection, and they're
Mhm.
playing Reach and, online Halo. So that just brought to mind when you're saying it's a clean ending to that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, that feels like, trying to culminate from Halo 2 to Halo 3. And
Yeah.
ugh,
Instead of it being a clean ending for the character, which is what it is for what Halo 3 was
sort of. I
for
mean,
Master Chief and Cortana,
yeah,
in the sense that they're done at that point, but they sort of bring them back. And in Kingdom Hearts 3, the end is more it's more of an end for the antagonist and his plans of all the previous games.
got it.
That doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other antagonists, because there definitely are.
Mhm.
One of which being Maleficent from
Oh yeah, Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping Beauty, or her own movies now.
Yes,
And it I'm super excited to see where they go. And they may not all be good, but I think they're all fun. And that's a series you can see me play all of. That's all available on twitch.tv/C&C Power Hour. In the video section, there's me streaming all of those,
Mhm.
which sure happened.
Sure did.
Uh, so that nope, I've talked a lot, and there's one last thing I need to talk
That's
about.
fine.
yeah.
Uh, The Walking Dead
Oh
final
yeah.
season.
Forgot about that.
We said we would come back to it, and it's sort of a
One out.
eulogy for Telltale Games, right?
Mhm.
It's there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened with that game studio. A lot of it being funds mismanagement and them. It's, there's a lot of discourse on it, but it comes down to this hugely influential game company just doesn't exist anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it started out the 2010s really strong. We only talked about them in 2012, I think, with The Walking Dead, but they started 2010 with the announcement of like getting the Jurassic Park license,
Yep.
I remember seeing trailers and stuff for the Jurassic Park. Yeah, the review for it.
and that
Game of
was
Thrones.
Game of Thrones, Back to the Future, Batman, Borderlands.
Oh, I've heard about the Batman one. I heard the
They
Batman one was really good, actually.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I've heard too. And I think they've done so many other great games, because like the format of a Telltale game is really like it's sort of like really easy to design once you have the art assets.
Yep.
And
I mean, it is literally a Western visual novel,
yeah,
effectively.
yeah, no, exactly. It's all dialogue, and a couple of choices and then more dialogue. They were great, and I think part of the reason that they folded is because they just sort of stuck to that model, and it doesn't necessarily like bring in new players. And even though the games were like usually critically acclaimed, they didn't sell very well. And it's just sort of like a shame that something like that influential had to crumble. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
some of the developers have reformed a new studio, and hopefully get to do that, continue on. And there are other game studios that crumbled in the 2010s, like THQ,
Yep.
which is kind of back with THQ Nordic.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the whole thing. I know the whole deal with like the Darksiders franchise and all that other stuff. I mean, they're going strong again. So
yeah. So it's I don't know, but it was sort of like a really interesting like capstone to of the 2010s shift towards narrative fidelity, right?
mhm.
Uh, and it's sort of showing that if your game is just narrative, you probably won't survive, right? Because
Outside of niche audiences and all that other stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
I think
outside of new
Telltale. I
shortages,
feel
yeah,
like, partially with the details of like Telltale's funds mismanagement was probably their issue. Like they
yeah,
probably were sustainable,
yeah,
but it was just this particular instance.
yeah. And so yeah, it's a shame. but it happens.
So you
But
think there's kind of like a natural progression of games in the 2010s? How, like, a look back on this is what happened. I asked that, and the thing I was gonna say is, like, I think we moved out of the big box, like the big
Right.
AAA blockbuster games to something that's uh, you can crowdfund your game development and make a really, really good
Yeah.
game.
yeah,
It's getting harder and harder to make games. They're
Yeah.
expensive, but at the same time, tools are becoming easier and easier. The
Yeah.
Unreal
Yeah.
Engine is free to use, I think, right now.
Unreal
Like,
4, yeah.
Unreal 4 is open to use. Unity makes things to make super easy.
Yeah.
Anybody can go up there and be a game dev,
Mhm.
allowing independent developers to try and make things, to make new, innovative games and innovative ways to play. Gaming has become a larger part of our culture. Everybody's a
Yeah.
gamer, from our phones on our games, right, to the broader understanding and mainstream acceptance of streaming,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
being able to play and be an influencer and entertainer. I mean, I think right now, like the aspiring career for kids, like not an astronaut, not a doctor, scientist, engineer. It is to be a
YouTube star.
Yeah.
right? Like, it's crazy that that is what people are into, and like trying to gaming is an aspect of that landscape,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you'll be able to do that, and then now that gaming has had a long enough history where people who grew up with video games like us now are old enough to start making the games that bring us back and target our old nostalgia. So I want to think back to a really important video I always think about from Extra Credits, was like how the most influential games, and how the games that were super influential to us from the indie games that came out were all these action platformers, right? Those
Mhm.
were the ones from
Yeah.
that we remember from the arcades. Those were like the beat 'em ups, the Marios, and all that other stuff, and bringing back to old school pixel art, right? But Minecraft, think about what the kids who grew up playing Minecraft, whether they are taught patience, they are taught problem solving, or they are taught resource management. What
Yeah.
kind of games will they make? And we see that a lot these days, where we have games that are about crafting, about building, and about surviving, and being able to, just be and work within a system, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about like who's got the twitchiest reflexes and who can, think on their feet the fastest. So I don't know. That's super exciting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if I were to sort of like sum it up, as I think the 2010s are more of a shift of games as experiences.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and be lifestyle games,
Perfect.
Yeah.
right? Like these long-term games where people can make a living out of gaming, not only from streaming, but also from esports. But also the fact that these games, like, they're not only more and more games were coming out at the glut of greenlight games, but then also the fact that these games are being played for longer and longer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In a sense, some of them, right? So like you have your fighting games and you have your MMOs, but then at the same time you look at stuff on Twitch where they're hot for a couple of months and they fall off again, right? This whatever is the big thing, like don't keep talking, nobody explodes. I mean, yeah, it's influential, but like you think about how many people are playing that these days,
Right.
right?
Yeah. What about you, Andy? What would you do? Or sum it up as?
The experiences thing is what I was gonna add. Just games as experiences, games as like, I think on one hand there's like two categories of games where um, you have the game that you are playing a story. The story has
Yeah.
been written for you and you're playing it.
Mhm.
But then there's sort of also the games that they let you build your own story, or they let you add your own um, kind of
They give you your own like
There,
agency into the story.
there
Yeah.
is a greater understanding of the unique advantages of gaming as a media.
Right.
Yeah.
So who was it? I think Roger Ebert, a long time ago. This is 2012, 2013, I feel like, where he was saying games can't be art because
Mhm.
you are actively taking part of it. It is not an artistic vision
Right.
anymore because you can influence the game.
Yeah.
In which case, but like at the same time, a lot of people were going against that, right? Like saying like, no, that is exactly the
Yeah.
benefit of video games, is that you can be more visceral. You can be responsible for what's going on screen. You were saying the agency
Yeah.
involved in gaming, like, could give so much more impact to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And I think too, like, and this is a topic for another day, but games as education, like, there's a whole
yeah.
world of that, and
Yep.
and using refining your motor skills and things that you learn from these games.
Yeah. We were
I don't
we were
know.
talking about it before the show, but
Yeah.
extra credits, which we mentioned a couple of times, and
Wonderful channel.
yeah, great channel. They had fairly early on, they had a series of videos on the gamification of education,
Mhm.
how important that is, and how effective it is, which is really interesting. We'll put that in the show notes. And if you've never checked out Extra Credits, it's James something.
James Bernardo, he
Yeah, he's a like a
he
video
was
game
a
design
designer.
consultant.
He's the guy who writes a lot of the scripts. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it's narrated. Is it still Dan?
No, Dan left. He does his own extra frames. I think
That's
is
right.
well, what was his original thing. I think it might still be called extra frames now when he broke off, or game design animation. I'll have to double check again. I still keep him up in there. It's like extra frames and stuff.
But yeah, but it so basically they're written by someone who gets is a consultant for designing games. So he gets pulled in by other video game studios to tell them, hey, this is how or for him to be able to tell them, hey, this is not how you should be running your operation, or
Right.
this is sort of like I see where you're trying to go, and I think this is how you would do it better or should do it better, and things like that. And so he's not the authority on on video game design,
But he is a veteran and he knows what he's talking about.
yeah, exactly. Like he's not as with anything. You always have multiple sources, right? But like he proposes a lot of interesting ideas and has a bunch of really cool personal takes on video game design and how important it is.
He has very much a broader perspective
Yeah.
amongst it all, right? He is not just some guy working on an individual studio who's working on an individual game at all times. This is a guy who's very much trying to understand where things are going as a whole.
hmm Very definitely worth checking out. We'll link a couple of episodes in the show notes. We I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can look forward to like what's coming up.
Yeah, I
A
feel like
couple
we
of things
kind of covered a lot
that
of
we
that,
don't
but
have too much like context on yet. We haven't seen it shake out, right? Like
Yeah.
Stadia,
Yeah.
right. Which
streaming games.
there was an episode on Stadia that Caleb did, but it's I don't know. I think the technology isn't there for it on the consumer side,
Right.
Mhm.
which is the biggest problem. But
That's a whole conversation I can go on about America's internet infrastructure, but that's
that's a history lesson. We're gonna start a spinoff called "Cause We're History Nerds," and we're gonna we're gonna talk about all this stuff.
please
'Cause-
do. I would love to go. I would love to talk about this.
Yeah, because there's a lot of context and stuff that is
I'm so much about context.
Yeah.
that is extremely necessary for this sort of conversation that is very tough to get out in a couple of minutes.
Yep. We have a note here on the Epic Game Store trying to break Steam's hegemony on PC gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit of Origin.
I mean, yeah, Origin tried to do it, and
Yeah.
they
Good Old Games is doing all right. I'd argue.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I don't know. People are gonna try, but it's the
Yeah.
the MMO thing.
Yeah.
Like people are gonna try, but
It's a juggernaut.
people do it really well.
Yeah.
Valve does it really well.
the rise of indie games, particularly on the Switch. I mean, I mentioned previously, Nintendo always had problems courting second and third party developers. It's
Yeah.
not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see where that goes. And VR. Yeah.
Yeah, VR is gonna be huge this year. And that's my hope because I'm excited. I think it will eventually get there, whether it is ready for consumers this year to
Mhm.
really go mainstream with it,
Right.
or ready for developers to go mainstream it for consumers.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big tell this year.
For sure. So yeah. All right. So what are we nerding out about this week, guys?
Well, I've already nerded out a lot on
Yeah.
the Valve
Yeah.
Valve Index. I'm excited for that. Hopefully they'll have it back in stock soon, and hopefully you'll get to see it if you check out C&C Power Hour. We'll be streaming that as soon as I get it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so I imagine it'll be like in this space. We'll just move the table out of the way and
Oh
do
no, it's
stupid
like
stuff.
Studio B all over again.
No, if we could turn this into a VR studio,
Ooh, that is Studio B basically. That could be.
It could be Studio B.
oh, that would be sweet.
We'll figure it out.
More construction projects.
No, wait, it's gonna be. Oh gosh, what's the room from the Community that Abed has?
Imaginarium?
Yeah, the Imaginarium room is basically what's gonna be.
It
Studio B.
It could just be the holodeck.
Yeah,
Like, it's-
Yeah,
exactly. It
I
just
mean,
becomes
yeah.
the holodeck.
Yeah. Lou, what about you?
So I mentioned that I play a lot of Smash. I stream it on Monday, play a lot of Lucario, and play with a lot of other Lucario players on Mondays. So most recently, the final character in the first DLC pack, Seasons Pass, I guess they call it, has been announced.
Yeah.
The character is Byleth from Final Fantasy III Houses.
No, Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem, not Final Fantasy.
yeah.
Fire Emblem, Three Houses. A lot of
The game
F's
we
on it.
talked about.
Yes. And so there has been some consternation amongst fans because there's already a huge number of Fire Emblem characters in Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
At the very least, Byleth looks to play differently than a lot of them. It's not. They even made a joke. They made a self-aware joke. It's like Byleth gets beat up at the trailer, and it's like, oh, so too many swordsmen already. What are you
Yeah.
going to do about it? And Byleth ends up wielding all the other weapons, like the most
Ooh.
overpowerful weapons in the Fire Emblem game. So she can also wield not only the sword but also a bow, an axe, and a spear. And I've been wanting a spear person in Smash for the longest time. So while it's only a couple of her moves, I am totally down for that. Gameplay-wise, she looks like something that's right up my alley, being somebody who has massive hitboxes and can keep you away. We call it a distance monster. So while sacrificing a little bit of, like being vulnerable and being super easy to punish if you defend against her, massive hitboxes.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm going to give her a try. She's not going to be out until the end of January, so I got a little bit of time there. Otherwise, Destiny 2 and possibly trying to find time to play Devil May Cry 5.
Okay. So,
Chris?
yeah. So mine's totally unrelated. Not related to video game nerdy things at all. But it's this article that I've been thinking about a lot recently. This article from the Guardian called "The Agony of Weekend Loneliness." And so the discussion within the article is about how private the weekends have become for people,
Yeah.
and not just people, but like couples and things like that, and how hard it is for people to deal with that dichotomy of the busy work week, like not just interacting with your coworkers or customers at work, but that's usually when your friends are available because you all have more or less a similar schedule. And then the weekends being, if it's just you, it's just you. You might have no meaningful contact with somebody until Monday when you're back at work.
Just the way I like it.
Yeah, yeah, no, some people do like it, and it doesn't bother a lot of people, but for a lot of other people, it is it's a really interesting. It has a really interesting effect on uh, how they view what are supposed to be like restful periods because they're sort of like dreading this lack of meaningful human interaction and
Yeah.
also like routine or things like that just sort of get old as time goes on. And they discuss in the article itself like how they describe or how they define loneliness as the difference between expectation versus reality when it comes to your life and where you think you're at and where you're actually at and coming to terms with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just to jump on that, I think there's a lot happening in the probably psychology world, psychotherapy world of self-awareness and self-discovery. It's something that
Yeah.
we as a generation have just been like faced with of like we are like generations before us had a lot of parental influence.
Mhm.
Our generation is way more independent. Sorry, we're way more dependent, but at the same time, it's not reciprocal as far as
Yeah,
parental.
when you start talking about like social media
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of people that are kind of wrestling with self.
Yeah.
I think that falls right in line of what that is. Like people don't know how to deal with loneliness on the weekends. People don't know how to deal with um, lack of social interaction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I'm hyper aware of right now, which
Yeah.
is I think unusual, but I don't think I have any answers for you other
Yeah.
than like or for the article, like answers to respond to the article other than like I don't know. Yeah, no, it's a
Yeah.
fascinating topic that yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It's a very fascinating read by the Guardian. It's a very personal and interesting discussion. And
The only other thing I was going to add is I think there's also a lack of um, social grace or forgiveness for people taking rest.
yeah.
I think the stigma is if you are not taking rest, you're lazy
Right.
and therefore not contributing. And there's a lot of like negativity surrounding that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of my friends are taking back the Sabbath of Saturday being like a day to do nothing, or
Yeah.
a day to be with your family,
Yep.
if you've got one, or friends. Like, hey, I love you guys.
Hey.
Like, I mean, a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have really close friends or people that they can hang out with all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for, I mean, at work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you're forced to be in a social environment, and
Yeah.
like it's not necessarily that. Especially this comes across really well in the article, but like when you're at work, it's not necessarily that you're forced to act differently, but by being like it's sort of like in your element, you're more confident, and by being like with a like-minded group of people, you know, you're having more conversations and things like that, and things that further your own goals and their goals. And when it comes to the weekend, and you're not forced to be with those people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like where do you continue that sort of thing? And so there's this really really weird and interesting disconnect that the article explores.
Mm.
And so definitely go take a read. Go read it. It's not too long. But yeah, it's at the Guardian. We'll link it in the show notes. It's a very very cool read.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting that we're sort of like trying to separate these things out. But Andy, what you been up to?
Dude, what you guys been up to?
I
What were
know,
you guys
right?
doing last night at 7:30 p.m.
Uh,
Eastern Standard Time? Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Standard Time. We were at the Theros pre-release.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, that was fun.
Uh,
Playing some Magic,
Yeah.
as we do.
Yeah.
That's all we do. We do Magic and this
oh yeah,
and work, and then are alone on the weekends. Full
yeah,
circle.
yeah. But yeah, no, it was a lot. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting.
Yeah. We don't want to go too deep in it because we talk about. We've already spent 2 episodes of Caleb's show on, on Magic, but yeah, come if you ever want to hear us talk about it, come join us live, and we'll definitely talk about
Bonus
it.
segment.
Bonus segment. Yeah. But yeah, the pre-release was a ton of fun. It was great to see everybody there, and it was
Mhm.
packed. I think it was sold out.
Yeah.
Wait, is there such a thing?
Yeah, because they only have 36 seats
Oh.
for the entire store for like fire code stuff.
Oh.
So,
Wait,
yeah,
did they have to turn away people?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I'm pretty sure last night there was the last guy walked in pretty close. He had already been on the list, and they had turned away a couple of other people beforehand.
Wow.
The last time I'd seen that was War of the Spark, I think. Was War of the Spark that packed? I don't think so.
Maybe I do remember seeing that before though.
Yeah, it's happened a couple times before. I
So
think.
that's why you keep on putting our names on there, because it's like I
Yep.
just remember. Because I was like, oh, okay, cool. I just walk in the Dominaria one or whatever where we met.
That's because I have spent years building up a rapport with Jay. Don't.
Jay's a good guy.
Yeah, Jay's a good guy.
Good people.
We go to the same store for our pre-releases, and it's a lot of fun, and it's great to see the same people every couple of months. And we could see them more often, but we don't because it's like Friday nights, and we have other stuff that we're doing. But
Right.
yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Cool.
What else? What else has been going on?
Lots of stuff.
Yeah. I actually haven't. I'm almost done with season 4 of The Good Place. I think I'm almost caught up.
Oh yeah. I started Superstore the other night,
Oh, how
which is it's interesting. Like it's
Okay.
really
What is it?
cheesy. It's a sitcom based out of a big box store type thing.
This reminds me of like, what was that? There's a web series back in the day where like Darth Vader was the manager of a convenience
Yeah.
store.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. Yep. And it's funny. There are funny moments. It feels very much like some of the earlier almost like what My Name is Earl type of you've got some stereotypes and they're exploiting them. So it kind of feels bad, but like I don't know, there's just some humor that you can relate to if you grew up around these parts.
Yeah. That's fair.
So you been watching anything?
So when I was away over the holidays, I basically I only have Netflix signed on my TV. So when I'm back, I'm trying to find time to catch up on The Witcher.
Yeah.
So I've watched a couple episodes. I've been really enjoying it, and I've just been meaning to finish. I've been like 4 episodes in, so I'm like halfway through.
Mhm.
So I do need to finish the rest of it. But I have enjoyed what I've seen.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something that I've been meaning to watch because I've heard it's been pretty successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard.
And then the newest season of anime is up. I have not been watching it regularly ever since I got out of college. But like this season, I mean, the past couple of years, it's supposed to be really good. And this latest season, there's some really interesting ones that I might try to find time to watch, but no guarantees. Oh, Pluto, what's up?
No, dog.
No, not
can't.
on the table.
Yeah, not on the table. Yeah. This season does look kind of interesting. I haven't watched anything from it yet. The only things that I've been watching are One Piece and My Hero.
Mhm.
And have I been listening to anything? I guess like there's a new Polka Dot Stingray mini album, and it's really good.
Hmm.
Those 4 songs. It's like it tops in at like 15 minutes, and it's real good. It's super poppy. What about you? You've been listening to anything?
The only thing I've been listening to lately is this. Oh gosh, there's a guy, Sam something or other, and he put out some remixes, not remixes, but some epic like Star Wars music
Okay.
on Spotify and YouTube, and he's got a SoundCloud. We'll link it in the show notes. Like, just listen to it. It gave my brother, who's like a huge Star Wars fan, goosebumps when he heard it. And I found out it's the music from the last trailer, I think, from the Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
So like, there's some legitimacy behind it. It's like it gives you feels.
Yeah.
So it's really good. It's really good listening music, and it's just like it's powerful,
Gotcha.
powerful stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Any podcasts or anything?
I've listened to a stupid number of podcasts,
Yeah.
so that's just going on and on and on. But I have one album I haven't listened to. If you're talking about music, so I have one of my favorite bands ever. Thank You, Scientist, is this prog metal band, and their latest album out, Terraformers, was out like last year or something. But I've never managed to actually listen to that thing in its entirety. So recently, I've been trying to finish it up again. I'm only still like 2/3 of the way through, but I've yet to find a track that I've either been bored by yet, but neither has one that's really like makes me go, oh, that's like my new favorite
Okay.
out of anything yet. Like they're good, but none of them in particular that like are real earwormy just yet. Like the first album I listened to death until like basically knew every single song by heart. So, and then the second album has a couple of pretty good songs that one of their singles is very close to my favorite. But the newest album though, there's not a bad song on there, but I'm still trying to find like a favorite clear winner out of them.
Okay. I'll have to give it a listen because I liked the first 2 albums after you linked them to me.
All right, sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you may have mentioned that they dropped their 3rd album last year at some point. I just
Right.
have not
Yeah.
bothered to pick it up.
Yeah.
But I'll have to find it on Spotify. So I guess that was it.
Yeah.
You know who else you should probably find on Spotify? I don't know if they're actually on there.
Oh yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah. Taylor Poole.
Taylor Poole.
Taylor Poole, I don't think is actually on Spotify, but he did do our theme music. You can find him at taylorpoolemusic.com. That's TAYLORPOOLE music.com. Lou, where can people find us?
You can find us at the C&C Power Hour. So that is
Ooh.
twitch.tv/CNC. That's this letter CNC Power Hour. We stream regularly on Sundays, Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
I do a Monday stream of Smash Brothers where I play my Smash main Lucario with a lot of other folks who are also hanging out on the Lucario Discord server. What about you guys? Do you guys stream?
Well, on Wednesdays, you guys do some paper magic.
Yeah, we do
Construct-
additional magic on Wednesdays.
Thursday, the 3 of us stream in our fire team.
Yeah.
Typically, well,
Yeah.
we haven't done it in like a month, but
Yeah, I'm not
life.
sure if we're going to be doing it this week either, but
No. Oh. Destiny.
but
2.
Destiny 2. I stream
Fridays.
Friday nights. Gabe and I, who's hasn't been on the show yet, stream Persona 4 Golden. Saturdays I stream Bloodborne.
Mhm.
That's about to end. I think I'm going to finish it today, as of time of recording, but we'll see. Yeah, you can also check out our website or the show's website. It's really weird talking about the show as like a separate entity, because you know we're in here on Caleb's request, right?
Yeah.
As stewards of the Cuz We're Nerds podcast.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
on assignment.
Yeah, he's on assignment and he's in Rio right now. But you can find us at cuzwernerds.com, CUZWERNERDS.com. Yeah, come check us out. That's got all of our previous episodes and some cool little profiles on all the hosts.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for listening to this episode of 'Cause We're Nerds. Stay up to date with all the nerdy news and podcast drops by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also leave us comments and feedback at cuzwerenerds@gmail.com. That's CUZWERENERDS@gmail.com. And as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, we would love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And as always, stay nerdy.